Hello, good morning. Welcome back to Crime Slides and Alibis. I'm Nicole. This is the continuation of day 5. This is for educational purposes and it's adults only. There is some really sensitive and delicate information that is being told here and really for mature audiences. They're calling in the next witness. She talks for I think about 20 to 30 minutes and then I'll be fast forwarding through their break. Sorry, there will probably be commercials. I am working towards a commercial-free existence, so just please really be patient with me for now. I should probably edit those out. But unfortunately with YouTube, when I edit it, it puts it to a different video instead of live stream, so I guess we take what we can get sometimes in life, right? And I'm curious how people think this is going for Lori. I don't think it's going well. But at this point, I don't think it really matters. I don't. It matters for Charles and it matters for his family that they seek justice and that in his name, people know
All right, you're going to come right up
it
here.
wasn't self-defense that he was murdered. But as far as on Lori's
here in front of
side,
us.
for her,
Car and my
it doesn't really
clerk will swear you
matter. This is a show for her. Because otherwise she could have said yes, it was, we intended to kill Charles.
You do solemnly swear that testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
But this is her way of
in.
being in the limelight,
Quarter
so,
seat to my left.
you know, of course she wants the attention instead of being a good person for once and making the right choice. Instead, she'd rather people see him in a bad
Please
way.
introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Robin Smith Scott.
I'm going to have you move up or pull down that mic so we can hear you a little better. Thank you. Where do you work?
I work at Banner Life Insurance Company,
How long have you worked there?
13 years.
What let me start with what does Banner Life Insurance do?
We are strictly a life insurance company. Customers can purchase life insurance policies.
And what do you do for Banner Life Insurance?
I work in the claims department as a claims representative. I process death claims.
Have you previously had to testify before about a payout of a policy?
Yes.
I'm going to start by asking some real general questions so we understand sort of life insurance. How does someone go about getting life insurance?
They could go through an agent. More recent years, you can apply online. There's information, you fill out an application, basic information regarding yourself. There could be some financial questions, health questions.
Okay. And you talked about a agent. What is an agent in there?
An agent is someone outside of our company, but they do business with us. They'll generally try to, find the best coverage and possibly best prices through, different companies for their clients.
When we're talking about life insurance, is there something called a policy owner?
Yes,
Can you tell us what that means?
pretty much exactly what it states. The policy owner owns the policy. They are the ones that basically can make any changes to the policy during the insured's lifetime, such as they can relinquish ownership. So basically do an ownership change. They can change the beneficiary. They could decrease the value of the policy, if they chose to. They basically have complete control of the policy.
What's the difference between the policy owner and the insured?
So the insured, the policy covers that person's life in the event of that person's passing. The death benefit would be paid to the beneficiary, but the policy owner, if that person is different than is not the insured, again, the policy owner is the only one who can make changes to the policy.
Okay. So there are times where the policy owner and the insured are not the same?
Correct.
Can the policy owner and insured then be the same person?
Yes.
As well? Okay. And you
Meet the new standard in sleep.
Okay, I
This
was
is
hoping there
Parker
wasn't going to
Ultra.
be one already because
It's
there
not a
was one
bed,
before I
it's a
went live.
revolution
But,
in the
you
sleep
know,
game.
YouTube hates me.
Okay.
Okay.
And you said the policy owner is able to change the beneficiaries. What do we mean? What is a beneficiary?
The beneficiary is who will receive the death benefit in the event of the insured's death.
Okay. Can the insured, if they're not the policy owner, change the beneficiaries?
If they do not own the policy, they cannot make that change.
Can the beneficiary, if they aren't the policy owner, change anything about the life insurance policy?
No.
Can they, when someone passes away, who decides who will actually be paid out? Who makes that decision of who will get the benefits paid out?
Well, as us claims examiners, we are going to review the policy, any documents that have been submitted through the lifetime of that policy, and we are going to determine and confirm who the primary beneficiary of the policy is.
So if someone obtains a life insurance policy and initially has one beneficiary, they can later file some new forms and create and change that to a different person?
Yes,
So you have to look through and make sure that you have the most recent beneficiary.
correct.
When someone calls in to make a claim on a life insurance, they say so-and-so passed away, is it customary for claims adjusters like yourself at Banner Life to sort of take that information and then look into all these things to make sure you know all of the different changes that may have occurred?
Yes, that is our standard process.
Does Banner Life Insurance keep copies of all of those policies as part of sort of your normal business practice?
Yes,
And does Banner Life Insurance keep copies of any modifications to a person's life insurance policy as part of the business practice?
yes.
If someone wants to modify who the beneficiary is, how do they go about doing that?
They would request a beneficiary change form. They can also access online if they are able to provide the proper security things through the website. But they would normally contact our customer service department, request a beneficiary change form, and complete it and return it. It is then reviewed by our customer service representatives to make sure it is completed appropriately. And if so, the change will be made. If not, then it's rejected.
Okay. Does a beneficiary modification form have to be notarized?
It depends on the amount of the policy. I believe anything that's $500,000 and above would need to be notarized.
So a policy for $1 million would require it to be notarized if you're changing the beneficiary?
Yes.
When people call in to the claims department requesting a payout, are those calls recorded?
Yes, they are.
And is that done in the normal course of business with Banner Life Insurance?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the life insurance policy with your company for Charles Vallow?
Yes, I am.
Are you familiar with how much that life insurance policy was for?
Yes.
How much was it for?
$1 million.
Prior to February 26th of 2019, who was the beneficiary of Charles Vallow's life insurance policy with Banner?
Prior to that date, Lori Vallow was the beneficiary.
So prior to February 26th of 2019, if Charles Vallow had passed away, would his wife Lori Vallow have gotten $1 million?
Correct.
In February of 2019, did Charles Vallow call Banner Life Insurance and request a beneficiary designation form?
He did.
Was one sent to him?
Yes, it was emailed to him.
And did Banner Life Insurance then receive a beneficiary designation form on February 26 of 2019 from Charles Vallow.
Yes,
Was that notarized?
yes,
And in that beneficiary designation form, did Charles Vallow change the beneficiary for his life insurance?
yes.
Who did he make the primary beneficiary for the life insurance?
His sister, Ethel K. Woodcock.
Your Honor, if I can have my paralegal approach with 215?
Did she just say her first
ahead.
name is Ethel? How do you... Ethel? All I can think of is Ray Stevens' song, The Streak. Where are you going, Ethel? Oh my god.
Looking at 215, do you recognize that both as an affidavit authenticating the Banner Life Insurance documents,
Yes,
as well as the beneficiary designation form change from February 26th of 2019
yes,
that we were just discussing? In there, is there also a CD?
yes,
Does that contain a recording of your call with Lori Vallow on July 15th of 2019?
yes,
And would you like to listen to that to verify that?
yes, please.
We've been lied to. This is the worst I've ever
So
seen.
is this gonna be one
is
of
a
those
place where
things
people
where
are so
15
angry,
minutes?
So frustrated,
Oh
so
my god.
fearful.
Why? I'm not starting out good this morning. I'm probably have to edit those out.
And do you recognize that as the call from July 15th of 2019?
I do recognize the call.
Your Honor, the state will move to admit Exhibit 215.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
215 is admitted.
And if we could perhaps break at this point,
Okay.
since it's 12:01, otherwise it'll be playing for a
All
while.
right, let's take our lunch recess for the jury. Please remember
And of
the
course,
admonition will
I feel like they did
resume
that on
with the jury
purpose
at 1:30.
because I'm gonna fast forward this and it's gonna give me another commercial. But I just wanted to say that Lori made a point to say, well, Charles had a life insurance policy on me too. Okay, what's your point, Lori? You're still alive. He's not. You know, like, that would have been relevant if he attempted to have her killed and there was verifiable proof that he was out to see her life end. But he wasn't. I think he genuinely, truly loved her, but he knew their marriage wasn't working. And there were issues and there was toxicity there.
Yeah, you can step down, ma'am. We attempted a sidebar during the previous witness. There were a number of questions. We had some technical difficulty with our headsets, so some of it didn't get captured by the court reporter. So for the record, on juror question form number 8, there were 3 questions. The first question was, were payments to Lori Vallow stopped after your investigation, which we did ask the last witness. Neither side objected to that question. The second question, if an applicant lied on an application, would an applicant have to pay back money they received? Both the state and the defense agreed that that question should not be asked, and it was not asked. The third question, did Lori notify Social Security of her remarriage or new marriage? The state did not object to, the defendant did object to that question as to its relevance. The state's argument was that it went toward motive. The court did ultimately ask that question of the witness. I think that's a accurate recitation of what happened at the sidebar. Does the state want to add anything or correct anything?
There you go.
Does the defendant want to add or correct anything?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Secondly, before I forget, I'm going to order that the clerk file the email that was sent by the state to my staff advisory council and the legal assistant for the defendant on Friday, April 11th at 4:35 p.m. And that's the email regarding the service of the subpoena on Bobby Vallow. Can we take up these motions that we referenced this morning at 1:15?
Yes, Your Honor.
We have a time to read those over the lunch?
I will try to, Your Honor.
All right, so we'll address those at 1:15. Anything else from the state?
No, Your Honor.
Defense?
Not at this time.
All right, we'll be recessed till 1:15.
Okay, so that's interesting. I feel that I'm surprised that the state was like not thinking that that was an appropriate question to ask. Probably, my guess, this is just me throwing my guess out there. Excuse me. My guess is that it would open up questions about why it would have been fraudulent for JJ because she'd gotten remarried. That was they have to tread really carefully with that one. Because she got remarried, that benefit would have gone away and she might have had to pay that back. But then she'd also have to explain, also have to explain that the money she was paid for JJ had to go back too. So it wasn't that it wasn't relevant, it was just that opens a can of worms that they're not really allowed to discuss because of the motions in limine. So I'm going to guess that she would have had to pay that back. Whether or not she did pay that back, probably not. But she probably would have had to pay that back because it's fraud. You can't commit fraud against the state or the government without expecting some kind of restitution expectation. Because then it just sets a precedence that anyone can do that and get away with it and be fine. Because they could always say, well, Lori Vallow, but again, what I was saying before about Charles having a life insurance policy on her, there's no proof that he had attempted to cash in on that insurance policy by having her unalived. Like, him having an insurance policy on her makes sense. He had one on himself, he had one on her. That makes sense. The amount is, he got the max. Makes sense. He paid into it. But she's still here. He's not. And also, it's worth noting that after Charles died, as a recap from yesterday,
Spring is
Really?
vastly approaching, and spring is the perfect
this.
time to
I'll just
do a
skip
fresh
ahead, I guess,
declutter,
because
clear
they're
out
going to
the
give me an
junk,
ad
clear out all the
anyway. I hate this so much. I'm just going to fast forward and give my thoughts at the end of today, I guess. Trying to get ahead because they'll be live again this afternoon. And it'll probably shove me into another commercial.
Served by Janice Cox and Summer Shiflett. Have you had a chance to review that and discuss it?
I haven't had a chance to discuss that with advisory council, and I would like the opportunity to do that, Your Honor.
All right, that's fine. I don't think that's imminent for today.
No.
And then I think we can also take up the state's third motion to preclude later today or sometime tomorrow. Is your next, let's have the witness come back in. I think all our jurors are present, so we can start a few minutes early. Let me ask my staff, they reprogram those headsets? All right, so we'll see. All right, please be seated. The jury is present. You can continue with your direct examination.
Thank you. When we took our break for lunch, we had just admitted Exhibit 215, I believe. And inside this contained the beneficiary designation form that was filled out by Mr. Vallow. Oops. Let me wait till we get our Elmo up. Correct, this is the form that we were discussing from the February 26th beneficiary change.
Yes, that's correct.
So we see that it's signed and notarized.
Correct.
And what this then shows is the primary beneficiary is now Ethel K. Woodcock.
Yes.
And then were there also contingent beneficiaries?
Yes, there were.
What are contingent beneficiaries?
Contingent beneficiaries are listed in the event the insured passes away and the primary beneficiary had predeceased the insured, meaning passing away before the insured. Since the primary beneficiary was no longer living, it would then drop to the contingent beneficiaries to receive the death benefit.
Okay. So if K. Woodcock had not been around when Charles passed, then it would have gone to Nicholas Charles Vallow and Zachary Chase Vallow.
That's correct.
When a primary beneficiary or a contingent beneficiary is removed from someone's life insurance policy, does Banner Life Insurance call that person up and let them know, hey, just letting you know you're not the primary beneficiary anymore?
No.
Why not?
They're not the policy owner, so they would not be entitled to that information.
So again, the policy owner is the person who can do whatever they want with the policy.
Correct.
On July 15th of 2019, did Lori Ann Vallow call Banner Life Insurance to make a death claim?
Yes.
And was that call recorded?
Yes, it was.
And is that the audio that you listened to before we took our break for lunch?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, if I may publish this? And again, that's just something that's the normal course of business that Banner Life records all of those people
All
calling
of our calls are recorded, yes.
You have the white yeah.
Claims Department, this is Robin. May I have the policy number? Sure. Claim? Yes. Okay, one moment, please. May I have the name of the insured? L. Charles Vallow.
Oh man, the nerve, the audacity.
And who am I speaking with? This is Lori Vallow. And your relationship to the insured? He's my husband.
He's my husband. That you had murdered, allegedly.
Okay, ma'am, I'm just going to need to ask you a few questions so that I can open the claim, and then I can go over the claim procedure with you and answer any questions that you may have afterwards. That would be great. Okay, first of all, may I have your daytime phone number, please? Sure, it's 8. And what was the date of Mr. Vallow's passing? July 11th. And what was the cause of his passing?
Huge pause. My brother?
Well, he was shot. Okay, so I don't know how I want to put that. Okay, all right. And I hate to ask, but is it? Yeah, you can just say yes or no. Was it a homicide? No, it was an accident. An accident. Okay. Okay.
Really? It was an
And
accident.
What state did he pass away in?
Holy crap.
Arizona. Okay. Okay, just bear with me for one
She
moment. I
said
just
it was
need
an
to pull up
accident.
a few other things.
There is nothing accidental about shooting someone in the heart and then in the abdomen. It's accidental.
Are you aware of who the primary beneficiary of the policy is? It's me.
Nope. God bless you, person.
Okay.
I'd
And
be
may
so
I have your,
embarrassed.
I'm sorry, one moment. My computer just went away for a second. Okay. May I have your current mailing address? Sure. It's 55.
No! No! Skip. That person's bad at math.
85249. Okay, ma'am. That is all the information I need to open the claim. What we will do now is review the policy and the file to confirm the beneficiary information and determine the claim requirements that we will need to settle this particular claim. Once we have completed our review, we will prepare a claim packet to send to the named beneficiary once that has been confirmed. And the claim packet can either be mailed or emailed or faxed. How would you like to receive a correspondence? Email would be great. Okay, and what is your email address? It's Lori, Lori. Okay. All right, so you should receive an email from our office within the next 3 to 5 business days or sooner. It will have the instructions listed. Once you receive the information, if you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to give our office a call, and then we can go from there. Okay, is there anything I can help you with at this time? That's it, I think. Okay, ma'am. Well, I'm very sorry for your loss. You take care of yourself. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Lord.
All right, so we hear in Exhibit 215, that's yourself speaking with Ms. Vallow?
Yes,
And we hear her, you ask her if she knew who the primary beneficiary was, correct?
yes,
And who did she advise was the primary beneficiary?
herself.
We also hear you ask about sort of the cause of death for Charles Vallow, correct?
Yes,
And you asked when there was a pause if it could be, well, after she told you he was shot, right?
yes,
Did you need to know sort of, was it a suicide? Was it a homicide? Was it a,
correct, yes,
and so did you follow up by asking her if it was a homicide?
yes,
And she advised you it was an accident.
correct.
You got a phone number from her, the 808-755-5452 number,
Yes,
and her email address, the Lori4Style@iCloud account.
yes,
And then you had verified with her that she wanted to receive any correspondence by email, correct?
correct, yes,
And in fact, did you advise her that the named beneficiary would receive information via email then?
correct.
Is it normal when you have someone call in to make a death claim to wait and look up things before you let them know?
Yes, that is our standard procedure.
Okay, so you weren't doing anything weird there, that's just what you guys have to
No.
do. So what does Banner Life do to verify that that person that Lori Vallow was the beneficiary?
We review everything on the policy file in the system, as well as any paper document that has come through, such as an ownership change, beneficiary change, anything of that nature during the entire life of the policy since it was issued, to confirm that information, to make sure that we are providing the information to the appropriate party.
Did you in this call know at some point that there was perhaps something incorrect about her being the beneficiary?
Not during the call.
Did you look up afterwards?
Yes.
Okay. When somebody calls in to notify that there's been a death and try to get the policy payout, what would normally be required? Do they just have to call in and then you send them a check if their name's on there?
No. We review each policy to determine the claim requirements for that specific claim. They can vary from claim to claim, depending on, the situation with that particular policy. That is why we do prepare a claim packet specific for each claim that has been reported. We provide a packet of information with the cover letter that lists the claim requirements that are needed. And the two things that are always going to be required is our specific claim form that we provide for the beneficiary to complete, as well as a death certificate, which states both cause and manner of death.
Okay. So after Lori Vallow calls saying she's the primary beneficiary of that life insurance policy for her husband, Charles Vallow, did Banner Life Insurance actually determine that she was not the primary beneficiary?
That's correct.
So now that you know she's not the primary beneficiary, how did you notify her of that?
I believe there was a letter that was submitted to her via email as she requested correspondence to be delivered to her in that aspect.
So would the letter tell her who was the primary beneficiary?
No,
Would the letter have told her when that was changed?
no,
It just advised her, would have advised her that she was not the primary beneficiary? Would Banner Life ever tell anyone who the new beneficiary is?
no.
Why not?
I know this is just going to trigger another commercial, but if I don't say it now, I'm going to forget. So I think it's really important to note, and I started to say this and then they came back, that I'm trying to put my thoughts into words that make sense. So when Kay was notified of Charles' death by his son, and she contacted Lori later to get Charles's stuff because he had a watch collection. He had things of value that, Kay wanted to reclaim. And there are people that are sentimental and there are people who are not. And I have a feeling Kay is more of a sentimental type. And it wasn't because the money was important. She and her husband owned a business that they were looking to sell. And they were going to be turning a profit on that. They both, she could travel whenever she wanted. So that tells me she wasn't doing half bad. And probably, it sounds like she'd also been living in the same place for most of her life. So there wasn't really anything monetarily beneficial to her necessarily wanting Charles's stuff, because he has children and he has other family members. So I'll just talk about when my husband's grandmother died. When she died, his aunt collected a bunch, and his mom helped, but they collected a bunch of the grandmother's belongings. They ended up donating most of her clothing to, I'm not even sure where, but they ended up donating most of her clothing because, people didn't really want that necessarily. But the other stuff that she had, any of her jewelry, which would have been, costume type jewelry, she didn't really have anything that was monetarily valuable. She had some furniture items. She had paintings that were created by her mother, who lived in Scotland. So there were different things that were all kind of laid out, and people were allowed to pick out what they wanted from grandma. And I was included in that. My sister-in-law was included in that. Not my husband's sister, but his brother's wife. We were all included. Even my daughters were allowed to pick out stuff that belonged to grandma that they wanted for their sentimental reasons. That's how a normal, well-functioning family does things. We want you to have something, a token, to remember this person if you want it. That's the appropriate way to handle someone's death. But Lori, being the entitled individual that she is, made sure that she took anything that Charles had of value, even though they were not together. They might have been married on paper, but at this point they had been separated. They were not living in the same household. She lied when she went to the Social Security office to state that they were living in the same household. And she lied because she knew she would only get the same amount for JJ that she was getting for Tylee. But if she lied and said they were living in the same household, then that meant she got the money for herself and for JJ. So she was actually getting 3 times the amount because she was getting money for Tylee as well. So she took all that was of value that belonged to Charles, which also included his laptop. And this is the audacity of the woman who claims to this lady that Charles died after being shot in an accident. Okay, so to me, an accidental shooting would be he was cleaning his gun and it accidentally misfired. Or like what happened to my uncle that died before my dad was born. He was hunting and they don't know if his rifle slid off the tree that he was leaned up against or what happened, but he ended up accidentally shooting himself, and they found him when he was halfway between where his gun had landed and home. Like he was trying to get back home and didn't make it. Now we're talking in the 40s, 30s, 40s. So like that's, just no one probably would have been able to save him at that point. Not really the point. That would be an accidental death by gunshot. Aiming a gun at someone and pulling the trigger is very much intentional. Whether it be murder or self-defense, that's not an accident. That was an intentional thing. He intentionally fired that gun twice. And he being Alex, Lori's brother. He wasn't handling the gun and cleaning it or whatever, and it accidentally went off shooting Charles. Those were 2 very intentional shots. The shot to the heart, the shot to the upper abdomen that went through the shoulder. Those are intentional. Those aren't accidental. So for her to tell this lady, knowing the call is recorded, I'm sure they warn you of that, knowing that she's about to make an insurance claim, had the audacity to call that an accident when it was very much not an accident. She could have said it was a self-defense shooting. He was killed in self-defense. He didn't commit suicide. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't like someone else was shooting at another intended target and accidentally shot Charles. That would be an accident. But someone intentionally holding a gun in his direction and firing said gun is absolutely not accidental. But that was purposeful of Lori because she didn't want to have to answer the questions about self-defense. She wanted to make it look like Charles was shot, it was accidental, give me my money. So it's just, I'm going to push play. Hope it doesn't go to a commercial. I'll be right back and I'll finish that thought.
We can't release that information. That's personal and private information.
And that's something that just the policy owner has the right to determine.
Correct.
So was an email sent to Lori Vallow on July 18th of 2019 to advise her that she was not the beneficiary?
Yes.
And did she call back to speak with you about the issue?
Yes.
And was there sort of a back and forth of phone tag before you were able to finally speak with her?
Yes, I believe she left a voicemail for me as I was unavailable. I returned her call, and I believe I had to leave her a voicemail, and then she did call me back, and we were able to connect at that point.
Okay. Aaron, if I can have my paralegal approach with Exhibit 280.
Okay, that's where I was going with that. Then Lori takes his laptop instead of giving it to Kay, and Lori, being the entitled person that she is, decided that it was her business to know where the life insurance policy was going, is able to find that by getting into Charles's computer, which tisk at him for not changing his stuff so she wouldn't be able to figure it out. And finding out that it was Kay, and then in a way of being petty and manipulative and being, again, that entitled sense of self, decides that she wasn't going to let JJ go to the service that they had for Charles. And that was her way of getting back at Kay for taking money that she felt was rightfully hers.
And if you can listen to that and see if you recognize that as yourself and Ms. Vallow again from the July 18th of 2019 conversation. Maybe you can just let us know when you have heard and recognized that as the July 18th of 2019 call.
Yes, I do recognize the phone call.
Thank you. Your Honor, the state will move to admit Exhibit 280.
280.
280.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
280 is admitted.
And if we may publish that.
Claims Department, this is Robin. May I have the policy number? Sure.
You shouldn't have to pay expensive out-of-pocket costs for therapy. Through Rula, you can find a provider who meets your needs.
Okay, I do have the policy pulled up. Who am I speaking with? This is Lori Vallow. I'm returning your call. Yeah. I missed you. Okay, no problem. Let me just get all of this information up. Okay, so in your voicemail, you stated that you had something that stated you are the beneficiary of the policy?
Right. So I have the original policy where I was the beneficiary, the sole beneficiary, and then we changed the policy to where I was 80% and we added two people, the Porches, who invested in our company for each 10%. And that's the last one I have. That's the last update that I have. So can you tell me when that was changed again? I mean, I know my husband is the agent on record, so he can change it. He's the owner.
Okay, I don't see anything regarding the second change that you said. I don't, with those percentages, I don't see anything at all with you as 80% at any time.
Okay, so maybe that's something he just told him he was going to do. That's just a handwritten copy I have that I found. So.
Okay, so well, I really can't give too much information, but I can tell you that the beneficiary was changed in March of this year.
Okay. Okay, I'm trying to figure out what he was doing since we have 5 kids and we've been married for 15 years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I know
Okay.
he owes a lot of people money, and I was worried if I got money, they'd be coming after me for money.
Right, no, I understand that.
But now I will be with none. So, but did he change it to one person, or was it several people?
Unfortunately, I can't release that. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, I know you can't tell. We're in the business. My husband is the agent. He's the agent.
Okay.
So.
Got it. Okay.
We deal with this business all the time, so I kind of know how it works, but I'm completely surprised.
Right.
We have our 7-year-old with autism that we adopted together, so I am surprised that she would do that without telling me.
Well, I'm so sorry.
So, I mean, there's nothing you can do about that, even though it's community
No.
coverage. I mean, it's his
No,
policy.
this is a contract that we have with the insured, exactly. So he's able to make any changes, during the lifetime of the policy.
Well, can I check? I mean, I have a policy, a $2 million policy on me. And since he's the agent, would he have been able to change the beneficiary on my policy?
Not if he was the agent. He would have had to have owned the policy, but I can certainly check.
But if he would have signed my name, could he have done that? I wonder.
I mean, I don't, I would hope that wouldn't happen, but let me just pull up, okay, let me just take a look and see what I can find on you.
He owed all these people money.
It's under
What is she
Vallow,
talking about?
Under Lori and Vallow.
Really? Charles owed a bunch of people
I have
money.
a $2 million policy on me, but I'm not even sure it's with Center Life.
I'm not showing that it's with us.
Okay. It might be Life of the Southwest. We work with several companies.
Right.
But I could call them and ask, I'm just asking the question, like, I could call them and ask them and make sure the beneficiary is who I say. I mean,
I would. I mean, if you have a concern of that nature, I certainly would call and check on your own policies if you, have concern that something may have happened.
Well, and I would have to change it anyway because he was the beneficiary as far as I know on my policy.
Right. So you would definitely want to update that at this point. And,
what happens, like if something happened to me, say today, and it's under him and he's deceased, what happens to that policy?
Well, if there's not every contract's different, but I mean, more than likely, if there was not a contingent beneficiary named, it would go to your estate.
To their estate.
Yeah. But if there's, if there's a contingent beneficiary name, then it would go to that person.
Right. Okay.
No one was out to get you, though, Lori. You were fine.
Okay. Well, thank you. I just needed that information.
Okay. No, not a problem. All right. You take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Now I'm pausing it on purpose. So she has the nerve. I was hoping we were going to hear this because they kind of touched on it with Kay, his sister. But we've got 5 kids, been married 14 years. There's that entitlement. First of all, you don't have 5 kids. You have 2 children that are minors. 1 child is legally his through adoption. And 3 grown children. 2 of those grown children are not yours, Lori. They were his with a previous marriage. So her acting like we've got these 5 kids makes it sound like she's taking care of 5 minor children with no money. So that part's laughable because 3 out of those 5 are adults. But she's such a child herself that, she's got to make herself look like this victim here. Like she's the victim. And then to be like, one of our son has severe autism. Okay, well, that's not this lady's problem. Like, it's sad. It's terrible. But also, she can't do anything about that. Like, okay, well, he has autism. There are services for that. There's additional money that you can apply for as a single parent with a child who has autism. I'm pretty sure that JJ should have been getting Social Security for his disability in general, because as a diagnosed child that has autism that sounded like pretty severe, she was probably already getting some kind of benefit for him for that. And the whole, he owed all these people money and they're coming after me. Really, Lori? Like who? I really would like to know that information, because she's claiming Charles owed this money to people, but sounds like he was a pretty lucrative, person and made money and did well and was well off. So that part confuses me. And she says in her police interview that she didn't want to be married to him anymore, that it was 14 years of this blah, 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 blah. And now she's like, oh, woe is me, he was my husband. I don't know. It rubs me bad.
So in this call, we hear yourself again with Miss Vallow?
Yes,
And we hear her telling you that her husband left her with 5 kids to care for, right?
yes,
And she told you that she understands how life insurance works, right?
correct.
That she and her husband run this business about it, right?
Yes,
But then she asks you if an agent would be able to change who the beneficiary was?
correct.
So she didn't really understand it.
I felt that she did not understand it fully.
And again, she told you she understood how this all worked, but then she asked you what would happen if she died. At this point, who would get, her money since her husband had been her beneficiary.
Yes, she did.
So you had to advise her of the fact that if there were contingent beneficiaries, they would get it.
Yes,
Ultimately, did Banner Life Insurance have any insurance policy with Lori Vallow?
no, she did not hold any coverage under Banner Life.
When she was talking to you, at one point she asked you or said, there's nothing you can do about that, right?
Correct.
And there's nothing you can do to change that. That is something that the owner is able to do,
Correct. We could not make any changes.
regardless of if you feel bad for someone.
Exactly.
Is it awkward for you when you have to talk to someone who thinks that they were the beneficiary and learns they're not?
It can be, yes.
Was that your last interaction with Lori Vallow?
To my recollection, yes.
Who did Banner Life Insurance Company ultimately pay the $1 million policy to?
To Mr. Vallow's sister, Kay Woodcock.
And before the
There are birds that prefer to travel on foot. Some 40 species have given up flight.
the insurance company, before Banner Life would pay that out to Kay Woodcock, did you actually have to call and verify with the police that she was not involved in the homicide or the murder of Charles Vallow?
Yes, that's correct.
I have no other questions for this witness.
Cross?
No questions, Your Honor.
Excuse me?
No questions.
That's
All right, Are there any
shocking.
questions for this witness from any member of the jury?
That makes her look bad.
I don't see any. You can step down. Thank you. State can call its next witness.
Thank you.
I have all these kids and no money. Been married for 14 years. Poor Lori. Woe is her. She thought she was going to get a huge payday, that she was going to get all this money and be able to marry Chad and be able to live the lifestyle that she was accustomed to, despite him owing all these people money. That's such a random thing for her to say.
All right, sir, come on right up here, right in front here and be sworn in.
Please spell your name for the record.
Jeff, Jeff, over, Mob,
Thank you. Please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
All right, you're gonna have a seat. Just walk around the court reporter, have a seat to my left.
Thank you. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Moberg. I'm a forensic scientist with the Arizona Department of Public Safety in the Firearms and Toolmark Unit.
How long have you worked there?
I've been with DPS since February of 2013. I've been assigned to the Firearms Unit since October 1st of 2018.
Can you tell us about your education and training to work in the area of firearms identification?
Sure. Part of the hiring standards for the DPS Crime Lab is I do have a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Arizona State University. My specialized firearms training is I attended the National Firearms Examiner Academy hosted by the ATF in Laurel, Maryland. The academy consists of 4 phases. It's approximately a year long, with phase 1 being research and history of and all of the techniques that go into it. Phase 2 is a full on-site 17-week training experience in Maryland, practicing exactly what it is that we do. Then we go into practical examinations, meaning I'm doing competency tests and proficiency tests throughout the summer and preparing a research project, which in phase 4 I will present and conduct mock trials.
Do you have ongoing training as well?
We do. Every year we're offered the opportunity to attend SHOT Show, which is the firearms industry trade show in Las Vegas every year. There's also the Association of Firearms and Toolmark Examiners meeting once a year, which is our annual training. It is nothing but peers within my discipline doing seminars and presenting on findings for various cases and various new technologies coming out.
And in DPS itself, is there any type of QAS or means to ensure that all of the firearms examiners are continuing to perform appropriately?
Absolutely. After the training, we are all given a competency test. We have to demonstrate our ability to do the job. So it's a very complex test consisting of all of the disciplines that we do, toolmarks, firearms, serial number restoration, various other aspects of my job. But then every year we're giving a proficiency test from an outside source, so we're testing our continued or demonstrating our continued competency within the field.
So I want to start by asking you just some generic questions about how a semi-automatic handgun works.
So a semi-automatic gun, meaning a semi-automatic means that it is designed to fire one round with a single pull of the trigger, but it's also meant to cycle the firearm. And what I mean by cycle is the process of loading a firearm means introducing a magazine, particularly in a semi-automatic, which contains a number of cartridges. Cycling it means pulling the slide back and allowing it to go forward. When that happens, it strips off one of the cartridges from the magazine and loads it into chamber. So we call that chambering. At that point, it is ready to fire. When the trigger is pulled, the firing pin is released on a striker type system. It's a spring-loaded firing pin, or a hammer type system where it's a weighted hammer that goes in and strikes a firing pin to hit this back of this cartridge to ignite the round. It then begins, the pressure builds up within that cartridge, expels the bullet down the barrel, but that same amount of pressure is also working to push it back. So it pushes that slide rearward, so it starts to move it back, unlocks the barrel, lets it go all the way back, and then it comes forward and loads the next one.
So I'm going to put up, first, I have Exhibit 76 here. Is this a semi-automatic handgun?
Yes, it is.
And then I'm going to put 85 in here. Is that what a live round looks like?
A live round, or we call it a cartridge, it's just a single unit of ammunition, consists of the cartridge case, primer, powder, and projectile.
So when a handgun is used and the trigger is pulled, we have a projectile that goes out to the barrel of the gun. What happens to the rest of that cartridge or live round?
So the rectangular portion on top, the black portion of the slide that's on top, that whole thing moves. So it will actually, when the cartridge is fired, the pressure of that cartridge will force that rearward, and it opens up that chamber so that the expelled cartridge can be ejected, the cartridge case will be ejected, and the new one can be loaded in via the magazine. The very bottom here where the kind of the hand is grabbing at the bottom is where the magazine is inserted.
So, put exhibit 77. Is this where you're talking about where the cartridge is going to eject from?
That is actually showing the side of the barrel that which houses the chamber, but that section opens up and that is where the ejection takes place.
So you had talked about this in some of the different jobs that you do as a firearms analyst. When a person fires a semi-automatic handgun, are there any sort of identifying tool marks that might be left on the projectile or the bullet?
Absolutely. All of that pressure that builds up and is pushing the cartridge case back, it is resting against what we call the breech face. The breech face has a hole in it where the firing pin comes through and it strikes the primer. The primer is just that little button in the center of the cartridge. It's actually a very volatile compound that ignites the powder charge instantly. So all of that pressure builds up and presses against that breech face. This being a semi-automatic, as it cycles back, the barrel has to unlock. So it moves slightly back, but then as it unlocks, it drops down. And as it drops down, that cartridge case is scratching up against the surface of that breech face, imparting all kinds of marks that we use for comparison purposes.
When the projectile itself is fired out the barrel, are there any tool marks left on that?
Yes. So when the bullet is being pushed out of the barrel, through the barrel, all of that pressure is pushing it through. A barrel is rifled. Now, rifling is a pattern of lands and grooves that are in a rotational pattern that impart the spin on there. All of that pressure causes the back end of that projectile to expand and to fill that void. So as it's going through, it's dragging along the inside of the barrel, picking up any of the imperfections from the manufacturing process that are there, similar to a fingerprint. So when it comes out, we're able to look around there and you can see the pattern of the rifling all the way around the bullet and the individual striations or scratches on the surface coming from the inside of the barrel.
So if you are provided with a gun, casings, and projectiles, are you able to determine in any way if those casings or projectiles were fired from a specific gun?
Yes, and we do that by doing what we call a comparison. So we go ahead and we take that fired evidence and we're going to look at it. We want to verify that there's markings on there that we can use for comparisons. Then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to test fire this firearm. I'm going to collect those test-fired cartridge cases and projectiles if need be, and I'm going to do a comparison side by side on my comparison microscope. It's just a high-powered microscope that allows me to see two things simultaneously, side by side at the same magnification. So I'm going to have them side by side and try to line up those scratches and marks that are left on there from the machining process to the next.
So when we're talking about a barrel, you said there's like lands and grooves in there. Is that alone enough for you to identify if a projectile was fired from a specific gun, or are you looking for more specific, unique characteristics from each gun?
So each one, we start with what we call class characteristics. The class characteristics are those that are pre-designed before manufacture, such as what caliber is it? Is it a 9mm? Is it a 45, 40, whatever it may be? Then we're going to look at how many lands and grooves are there. If there is it, maybe there's 5, maybe there's 6, maybe there's 8. All of that we use as an initial screening. Can this come from this gun? Say I have a gun that's a 9mm and I have a 45 bullet. That's not possible. So it's an automatic rule out. But those imperfections from the manufacturing process are what we use, and how the scratches translate into there are very unique to those barrels.
So you said you test fire the weapon. Why do you do that? What are you using that for?
Well, when a case like that comes in, whenever we receive a weapon, we first and foremost, we want to verify, number one, that it's safe and unloaded. Number two, that it's actually operational as a weapon. So we're verifying that it can fire and it works as designed. But then I'm also using that time, I document the condition of it as I received it. I document any of the features that are on there, such as in this particular case up here, we have a brown and black gun. That's one of the notes that I would have on there.
When you are doing this comparison and looking for these unique characteristics that you may see from the tools or the actual combustion of this, are there different levels of interpretation or conclusions that you're able to reach during this comparison process?
Yes, when we're doing a comparison, we're first and foremost looking for marks that recreate. So the different levels of opinion that I can form at the end is I can identify it. I can say this piece of fired evidence was fired from this gun. I could say this piece of evidence was not fired from this piece of gun, or this particular gun, excuse me. Or if there's just none of those marks that are reproducing or an insufficient amount of marks for us to actually compare, we can actually go out inconclusive, meaning I'm not sure whether it was or not.
So I'm going to have my paralegal go up to you with a few items here. It is exhibits 235, 38, 40, 239, and 246. I'm going to let you sort of keep those, and I'm going to start with 246, the handgun. Were you provided with that gun as part of a request to determine if you could, well, were you provided with that gun?
I was. When we receive evidence such as a firearm, we actually initial, date, and put the identifying information to the case on the firearm. Right here, just underneath the slide on the frame of this firearm is the DR number, our department record number, the item number. So the combination of that DR number and the item number is our unique identifier to track that piece of evidence, and then my initials and date.
Okay. Were you provided with a couple of casings, 238 and 240?
Yes, I was. And again, when I received these, when we receive evidence such as this fired casing here, which is 240, we initial and date the day we receive it. So it's here. There's my initials and date from when I resealed it. It's currently hiding up. It's actually right up here at the top where I initial and dated it when I received it.
Okay. And were you also provided with a projectile, if you can look at 235 and 239? And I believe you only had one of those.
That's correct. There's the one bullet I received right underneath our unique tracking. We barcode everything. It's got our department record number, item number. I initial and dated it as I received.
And which number was that?
This is item 239.
Thank you. What were you asked to do with these items?
This particular case, I was asked to compare the cartridge cases and the bullet back to the firearm.
And that's the firearm that we see here in Exhibit 77, what we see as 246.
Yes, it is.
All right. So starting with this, what can you tell us about the gun itself? What is the caliber? What is the brand of that?
The firearm is a Springfield Armory XDM 45 caliber semi-automatic pistol.
And so when we talk about 45 caliber, what does that mean?
45 refers to just the size of the bore. In this particular case, it's a 45 auto caliber, so or 45 ACP, common to most 45s made today. But that's actually the measurement of the bore.
Were you able to, when you looked at you told us you often look to see just initially, do these all match together? When you looked at the caliber of those casings that you were given, did they match with the 45 caliber?
The 2 cartridge cases I received were Fiocchi brand 45 auto caliber cartridge casings.
Okay. Now, what about the projectile, the bullet that you're given? Is there a way for you to determine if that is consistent with a 45 caliber, being fired from a 45 caliber handgun?
Yes, so when we receive a bullet like this, I'm going to go ahead and measure the diameter across the fired bullet to achieve that, and it measured, I don't know the exact number, but it's approximately 0.45 inches.
Okay. Now, when you first were handed the gun, you said you'd make some notes about that. Did you note anything about it as to whether or not the gun appeared to have been previously fired at some point?
The only notes that we take is we do look down the barrel of the gun when what I'm looking for is mainly safety purposes. I want to make sure there's no obstruction, because if I fire it and there's an obstruction, could be catastrophic failure of the firearm. But I'm also looking at and documenting the rifling. And when we look down a barrel, we can see, I would notate that it's slightly fouled barrel or whatnot, meaning that there's powder particles and or traces of bullets going through the firearm.
So that would mean it was consistent with having been fired at least.
Correct.
So you talked about test firing. Did you test fire this gun?
I did. I test fired this particular firearm into a water tank. I used the water tank because we wanted to collect projectiles for comparison purposes, and the water tank allows us to do that without damaging the bullets.
What kind of ammunition do you use? How do you determine that?
So first and foremost, we would like to use like ammunition. So this was Fiocchi brand ammunition. We hopefully would have some of that in our reference collection. However, I did not, so I would grab the next closest type of ammunition. I believe it was Winchester that I used in this particular case, that has the same exact type of primer, the same exact type of casing, and the same exact type of projectile.
When you talk about the same exact type, are you talking about like the metals, or what are you talking about?
For instance, the bullet in this case is a copper jacketed round nose full metal jacket. So I would look to test fire a copper jacketed full round nose bullet.
Okay. So when you test fired this gun, did you know anything with regards to the functionality of it?
I noted that it functioned as designed. I did test fire this by hand chambering. I didn't try a magazine in there because one wasn't submitted with it, but it operated with no problems.
Okay. How many times did you test fire it?
We collect a minimum of 3. In this particular case, I only did fire it 3 times. That's all that I needed.
And so each time you're having to put a bullet in there and pull the trigger each time?
That's correct.
If you'd had a magazine, would you still have had to pull the trigger each time to fire it?
Yes, it operates still semi-automatic, so the trigger would have to be pulled each time to fire a cartridge case. I just wouldn't have to reload one into the chamber each time.
Okay. So once you created these test fire, let's start with cartridges, did you attempt to compare those to the ones you were provided, exhibits 238 and 240?
So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to collect my test fires, and I'm going to compare them to each other. And why I'm doing that is I want to make sure that there's marks on there that reproduce over our test fires. If there's no marks reproducing, how would I be able to compare it to the evidence? From there, once I determine that it's sufficient, and I do photo document all of my comparisons, once I figure it's sufficient for an identification there, I'll go ahead and do a comparison to the unknown evidence and make my opinion based on that comparison.
So the test fires that you have, you look to make sure that those are creating each time the same both class characteristics and individual characteristics.
Correct, yes.
And the class being sort of the generic ones that every type of Springfield might create?
Correct, yes.
And these individual ones are characteristics that are specific and unique to this weapon?
Correct. They're from use, abuse, cleaning, anything like that, and the individual manufacturing of each component.
When you compared those 2 cartridge casings, 238 and 240, to the test fires that you created from Exhibit 246, the handgun, were you able to reach any conclusions?
I was.
And what was your conclusion?
I was able to determine, I identified those cartridge cases as having been fired on that particular firearm based on my comparison of the test fires to that evidence.
So the two cartridge casings, 238 and 240, were fired from the handgun you have up there, 246.
Correct.
You also, when you test fired the gun, did you collect the projectiles, the bullets?
I did. I collected three bullets from our water tank for comparison purposes.
Did you go through the same process of looking at those three to see if they matched up?
I did, yes.
And did they?
They absolutely did, yes.
So again, they had sufficient class characteristics and individual characteristics for you to then proceed to try to identify them or compare them to the unknown bullet.
That's correct.
When you compared Exhibit 239, the projectile that was recovered, to the projectiles that you created when you test fired, were you able to reach any conclusions with regards to this weapon?
I was, like the cartridge cases, I identified the projectile as having been fired from that particular firearm.
So the bullet that you were given, you've identified as having been fired from this Springfield semi-automatic 45 caliber handgun.
That's correct.
Did that end your work in this case?
That ended my analysis from this case. From then, I go ahead and I take all of my notes. The entire process I'm photo documenting. So when I open this up and I was documenting the condition as it's receiving, I'm also taking photos. When I'm doing the comparison, I'm also taking photos of the evidence side by side and any kind of areas of interest that I'm looking at. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and document my opinion and my results on our worksheets. I'm also going to print out all of my photos. I am then going to take all of that evidence and I'm going to hand it to another trained examiner. That other trained examiner, without looking at my results, is going to take all of that evidence and do a comparison himself. And then he'll form his own opinion and then verify that it matches or is similar to my results.
And was that done here?
Yes, it was.
Did that alter in any way your opinion?
Not at all. He was in agreement of my results.
When you talk about the photos, so in your report, you're actually showing all of those characteristics that we've talked about so anyone else could later look at them and see how you reached your conclusion.
The photo documentation it's just a snapshot of one portion of the comparison, but yes, a trained examiner should be able to look at them and understand what exactly I was looking at.
Right, so ultimately your conclusion was both those cartridge casings and that projectile that you were provided was fired from the gun you were provided.
That's correct.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Cross-examination.
I just have a couple questions, Your Honor. Mr. Boberg, when did you receive the request to test this firearm?
It was early March of this year.
So March 2025?
Yes.
Okay. And then how long after you received the request did you test the firearm?
I was notified that the request was coming in a couple of days. I received the evidence on a Wednesday, which my week wraps up on Thursday, and I did all of the work on that the following Monday, and the report was put out by Tuesday morning.
Okay, do you know what the date that Tuesday report was put out by?
I don't know the exact date. If you'd like, I can refer to my notes and give you that exact date.
Sure, that'd be great.
Is that okay?
Is that okay?
So the report was authored on March 4th of 2025. The evidence was received in our property and evidence unit on 2/26 of 25, in which I also received them on that 2/26 of 25 and returned them to our evidence room on the 4th of March.
Okay, thank you. And who requested you to do this test on this firearm? Where did your request come from?
This particular request was made from a detective who reached out to me via email explaining could I assist him with a rush. I passed it through my supervisor who allowed me to contact the detective and have the evidence submitted. And then it was assigned to me because the request was sent directly to me.
Do you know what detective that was?
Detective Duncan.
Okay. And then who did you send your report to?
Once I'm finished with my analysis, my report is then reviewed by another examiner and then a supervisor to make sure that it's all technically correct, and then admin, and then they're electronically released to Detective Duncan.
Okay. And then you said you had done some photo documenting. Were those photos attached to this report?
They were attached to all of my case notes, yes.
Okay. So there's a report, case notes, and then the photo documentaries?
It's all part of, the notes and the photo documentation is all one.
And how long do you think that report was total?
Oh, it's roughly 13 pages total, 13, 14 pages with the actual report.
Okay. Thank you. So you fired the firearm 3 times, is that correct?
That's correct.
In your testing?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. And then if you did you point it all in the same direction when you fired?
When I did my test firing, I was firing into a water tank. The water tank has it's approximately 10-inch thick stainless steel tube with a rest inside of it that I fire it into, so it stays in one place and fires at a specific angle into the water so that I'm not striking anything or being unsafe in any way.
And what's your distance at that point?
Approximately a foot.
Oh, just a foot away into the water tank?
Into the water, yeah.
Okay. And then did all of the casings go into the exact same place, like close to the same place?
So around the inlet tube that we shoot into, we have a big net that catches the cartridge cases.
So you can't really tell where they land then, I guess, because the net catches them? Is that what you're saying?
It's land as far as they kind of shoot out of the gun and then get caught by the net.
That's not the purpose of the...
So they don't land on the ground and roll close to each other?
That would be unsafe, dummy.
But you kind of got a feel for this gun because you shot it, right?
I did.
So if you were to shoot the gun straight and then move 40 degrees to the right and shoot it again, do you think that the casings would end up in the same area?
Objection as to speculation without foundation of...
He shot the gun, Your Honor. I was asking his opinion.
Hold on. He can answer, first of all, if he understands the question.
If I may clarify?
Sure.
So you're asking if I point a weapon, say this way, and then turn this way?
Correct.
Okay. I can't answer that.
Go ahead.
I would expect the cartridge case to be slightly different from the very first one, but not much, depending on what interacts with it in its flight path. Did it bounce off of something? What's the floor type? Or whatever it hits first? I couldn't say without knowing any of that.
Okay. So would it be safe to say that the casings would end up in the same place if you didn't move and you fired 2 shots? They should end up close to the same location.
Again, it really depends on what is around, because typically when a semi-automatic firearm is fired, the slide comes back and the cartridge case ejects up and to the right. So if you moved slightly, you're changing that angle slightly, so it could be slightly different. It could be in the same location, depending on how they bounce and roll.
Okay. So if you fired the gun and the casing ricocheted off the wall, but then you moved the gun and fired it again somewhere else, it could miss the ricocheting of the wall altogether, right?
Again, without knowing the scene, I couldn't say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in your report, I don't want to simplify it because I know that you are a scientist, but is it basically saying that this gun, that those casings came from this particular gun?
My exact wording would be very similar to that. It would say items, whatever the unique identifier is, were identified as having been fired from item, which is the gun.
Okay. This particular gun, correct?
Correct.
And then you would say that those projectiles also came from this particular gun. Is that correct? Okay. And then, and this testing was done this year on March 4th, is that correct?
March 4th is my report date, meaning all of the analysis is completed and it is done. At that point, my analysis was actually conducted on the 3rd.
Okay. Okay, no more questions, thank you.
Redirect.
Another completely useless line of questioning from Lori, but, you know, what do we expect at this point, I suppose?
Which side did the casings eject from on this Springfield?
On this particular Springfield, the ejection port is angled to the right and up.
Okay. So in order to, well, let me ask you this. When casings are ejected and you're not attempting to move your arm or the gun, do they always land right in the exact same spot?
They do not.
Do they bounce and roll?
They do. Again, it's a very violent action. That slide is moving very quickly. A lot of times the cartridge case is spitting, so they could tumble through the air and again bounce off of anything such as the floor, walls, anything around.
So even as each time you pull the trigger, if you're trying your hardest to keep it as still as you can, does that mean the casings will land exactly right next to each other?
No, they won't.
Where the casings land, does that depend on multiple factors?
Absolutely.
So the type of flooring or ground would be one thing?
Any kind of intervening objects, type of flooring, if it lands on grass, it's probably going to stick or stop, or if it lands in carpet or tile, wood, all bounces differently.
If it bounces off a wall, that would impact where it might land?
Yes.
So having fired guns multiple times, semi-automatics, at your best in trying to keep them together, are they maybe grouped in a general area together?
Typically, when we're firing multiple rounds repeatedly, they tend to generally land in like kind of a pool area. It's not small, but it is a generalized area.
And in a situation where a gun may be slightly moved, that cantering of a gun, can that change the location of the casing itself?
Absolutely. I mean, it's designed, as it's designed, it will eject up and to the right. So, I mean, if you turn it this way, it's up, could change dramatically however you're angling it or turning it.
When you are talking about casings and where they land, even if you go and see them, are you able to look at them and say that was from shot number 1 or that was from shot number 2?
Oh, no, we just generalize an area of where a shooter might have been.
And again, that's just because they're landing at best in a pool area, even if you're trying to shoot as straight and uniform as you can.
That's correct.
I have no other questions, Your Honor.
All right. Any questions for this witness from any member of the jury? I see at least one coming down.
Guess I got some cards, I guess. Can't give me any I don't have. Fucking game.
All right, I have a question from a juror.
Oh,
Where
God, I
would the
was thinking.
casings go if the gun was held sideways?
Just for clarification, sideways either way.
Why don't you tell us for either way?
So if I was to cant it sideways and the butt was down, it could potentially go up and fall to the left side because of the way the gravity would be. However, if you turn it this way, it's angling it further down. And again, it depends on how it hits the ground, what it can bounce off of.
All right, any other juror questions? Not seeing any follow-up from the defense based on that question?
No.
State?
No, Your Honor.
All right, sir, you can step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. State can call its next witness.
Thank you. Detective Cassandra Enclan.
All right, come on right up here in front and be sworn in.
Hi, can you spell your name for the record? Sandra, C-A-S-S-A-N-D-R-A. Y-N-C-L-A. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name's Cassandra Anglon. I'm a detective with the Chandler Police Department in our robbery homicide unit.
Can you tell us about your career with the Chandler Police Department?
So next week, I will have 24 years at the department. Started in patrol, graduated through the Phoenix Police Academy. I have no prior, all my experiences with Chandler. Started in patrol, I worked there a couple years and then was selected to move into a newer unit they created, which was more of a general investigations unit. Worked assaults, burglaries, thefts, kind of entry-level detective type cases. We had a reorganization I'd been in that unit about a year and a half, and that unit morphed into our family violence unit. So at that point, my cases became primarily physical child abuse cases, some missing person type cases, and then the majority was domestic violence, assaults, aggravated assaults, things like that. Worked in that unit for a couple years and then moved into our narcotics and organized crime unit and worked in that unit for about 5 years, doing primarily large-scale narcotics investigations. In September of 2009, I was selected and moved into our robbery and homicide unit, and I've been in that unit since September of 2009, where I am now.
As part of your job, are you called out to respond to scenes?
Yes.
And what are your normal working hours?
So we work 4 10s, so 4 10-hour shifts a week. There are 6 people in our unit, so I am one of the 3 that works Tuesday to Fridays, and then the other half of our unit works Monday to Thursdays. But there is 1 detective in our unit that's on call all the time. And then depending on the scale of the case, The on-call is responsible for being available to come in off hours, but depending on the scale of the case, they'll call in additional detectives to help, sometimes supplementing from other units within the department depending on the case.
Were you working on Thursday, July 11th of 2019?
I was.
And where were you located? Where's your office?
So my office is at our main precinct, which is in downtown Chandler. But that day, I was not in the office. I was driving to kind of a community event that was in West Chandler.
Were you asked to respond to a scene at 5531 South Four Peaks Place in Chandler, Maricopa County, Arizona?
I was.
Why were you asked to respond to that house?
So I had initially heard some radio traffic about a potential shooting that had happened there. And then, so I was aware of the call for service that was going on that patrol had responded to. And then I was contacted by my supervisor shortly thereafter by phone because I wasn't in the station. And they had asked that myself and several detectives respond down to assume that investigation from patrol.
Do you recall approximately when you arrived at that house?
I believe it was right around 9:28, 9:30 is my arrival time on CAD, but it would have been within a couple minutes of that, depending on how significant the radio traffic was that I could get out onto the radio.
In 2019, as a detective, did you have body-worn camera assigned to you?
We did not.
So you were not wearing a body cam unit at that time?
No, we did not get ours issued until, I believe, a couple years later.
Okay. Can you describe for us the crime scene when you arrived?
So when I arrived in the neighborhood, it's a gated community. I arrived on the north side of where the residence was. Marked patrol units and uniformed patrol officers were there. There was already yellow crime scene about a house or two north and a house or two south. And I could see several of the initial patrol officers that had responded that were present when I got there.
When you got there, was the fire engine still there?
I believe they were, but there was what we call our care unit. Our CR 288 is the crisis unit. They're a fire personnel, but they respond out to our scenes at our request as well.
Okay, and so that was there.
Correct.
Did you observe any individuals that you learned to be the shooter at the scene?
I did, Alex Cox.
Can you describe where you saw him?
So when I approached the house, I was walking south towards the house. He was seated on a curb. I remember there being like a trash can or something right there. And Officer Krautheim was outside. And I remember seeing him sitting there as I walked past up to a supervisor at the scene.
And can you describe for us the demeanor of Alex Cox when you went by him?
He was sitting on the curb, didn't really appear, just kind of normal, wasn't really agitated or upset. He had what looked like, I think it was a paper towel or Kleenex in his hand. And at one point he reached back and kind of touched the back of his head. But he was just seated, just kind of sitting there.
Okay. Did you observe yourself any injuries at that time to his head?
I did not. I didn't have contact with him at the scene at all.
Okay. When you arrive at a scene like that as a detective, what's sort of the process of what does everyone do when you get there?
So initially what we try is that the first one or two investigative type personnel usually will make immediate contact with the supervisor on scene, usually a sergeant or a lieutenant, and try to just kind of do a quick assessment or triage of what's going on. What is kind of the quick initial what happened? Is anybody outstanding? What are kind of the things we need to do? because then as personnel from like my unit and other investigative units arrive, we can start assigning tasks and roles. We always, by practice, assign a case agent, and then a scene agent is separate. And then any other personnel that get there start assigning tasks, what needs to be done, what needs to happen.
So what is the roles of a detective versus the patrol officers who've been there?
So patrol officers are going to be your first responders. They are going to be the ones that dispatch when you call 911 or the non-emergency number. Patrol is going to come to your house first. They're the uniformed in a marked patrol car. They're going to respond out and do the initial investigation, initial scene safety, initial first aid, until it's safe for fire to get there. They're going to be your initial first responders. If the call or event or incident that they're responding to is going to be more significant or more serious, or maybe needs more specialized equipment or investigation, or potentially they might need a search warrant, then you're going to see where detectives are going to get called out to assume an investigation from patrol. So there will be some overlap. And then once we come out and kind of take the investigation over, patrol then gets released from the event, and it will become kind of property of the detectives that come out to assume the case.
Do you have patrol officers still helping things like securing the scene and making sure that, no one is just running up into the house or something?
Absolutely.
While you were on scene, did you notice any other civilians kind of waiting around?
Yes.
Who did you notice?
At one point, I realized that where Officer Krautheim was standing, basically across from the house, it was within the crime scene, that an adult female, Lori Vallow, and then her daughter, Tylee, had at some point got there. I'm not sure exactly when, but I realized that they were standing in the vicinity of Officer Krautheim within the crime scene near a red car.
Did you see the interaction between Officer Krautheim and these two, Lori Vallow and Tylee?
I did, from across the street.
Okay. When you saw that interaction, did you know who they were at that point?
I did not know who they were. I found out a short time later.
Okay. So did Officer Krautheim advise you and other detectives who they were?
Yes.
So you said the female was Lori Vallow?
Correct.
Do you see her in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you point her out and identify what she's wearing?
She's seated at the defense table wearing like a navy blue blazer.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant.
It shall.
Can you describe Lori Vallow's demeanor when you saw her across the street there?
So she was standing, the car they were near was parked along the curb, and she was standing basically in front of the parked car, and Tylee was standing next to her. Just kind of appeared to be having this kind of ordinary interaction with Officer Krautheim, just kind of talking to him, didn't seem real animated or emotional. Just seemed very kind of ordinary and kind of nonchalant.
Were any police cars visible at the crime scene?
Yes.
And so there's yellow crime scene tape up?
Correct.
Okay. So when Officer Krautheim came over, did he talk to you and some other detectives?
He did.
And did he advise you about his interaction with Ms. Vallow and Tylee?
He didn't talk to me about their interaction. He just more identified who they were.
Okay.
And at that point, we had had some discussion about kind of additional roles that had just developed.
So at some time while you're sitting there and you're standing around talking with sergeants and whatnot, is that when you learned who you believe to be the shooter, Alex Cox, was?
Yes.
And at some time while you are again getting these updates, did you learn who the deceased male was inside the residence?
Correct.
And who was that?
That was Charles Vallow.
During this time, did it become known to you the relationship between Lori Vallow and Alex Cox?
Correct. They were brother-sister.
And during this time, did you become aware of the relationship between Miss Vallow and Charles Vallow?
Correct. Husband-wife.
After you, or I guess during the time when you were speaking with these officers, were you updated by Officer Krautheim about whether or not Lori Vallow knew her husband was dead?
No. I had talked to my sergeant, actually, about speaking with her specifically about doing what we refer to as a death notification.
Well, let me go back. So did you believe that Lori Vallow knew her husband was dead?
I did not.
You thought she had no idea?
I didn't think she knew because she wasn't there when I got there.
Had you been advised that by Officer Krautheim or his sergeant relating to information he had received from Alex Cox that she was not present?
I didn't believe that she was present at the time the incident occurred prior to me speaking with her.
Okay. And that was based upon information that you had obtained from briefings?
Correct.
Okay. Since you thought that Lori Vallow did not know her husband was deceased, what did you do?
So I had a brief discussion with my sergeant, and we agreed that it would be the right thing to do a death notification to her. She is legally his wife. They are married. She would be his legal next of kin. She's standing basically in the crime scene, and I think professionally it's in delaying letting someone know that their loved one is deceased isn't appropriate. So we made a decision at that point to contact her to do an actual death notification, so it was clear that he was deceased.
Okay. So because she's there at the scene, do you just walk up to her while she's standing right there in front of the car to notify her? How do you do that?
No, so her and Tylee were now seated within the care unit that I had mentioned, our CR 288. They have a van, and we utilize it a lot. So they were seated within that van. I had approached the van with my sergeant, and my intention was to try to get her to come out of the van because Tylee was in there with her, so I could have a discussion with her outside of the view of any children. When I made contact with her, we ended up having the conversation with her in the van with Tylee.
So let me ask this. What was her demeanor when you see her in this van?
Pretty much the same as her demeanor before, not real emotional. She was pretty calm, didn't seem overly affected.
I think you had used nonchalant previously.
Yeah, it's a good word to describe it.
So how did that notification go down? Were you able to tell her what happened?
So, opened the van, I made contact with her. I think at some point I asked her something to the effect if she would step out of the van to talk to me, and at that point she said that she already knew because she was there, which was kind of a surprise. I wasn't necessarily expecting that. And at that point, I confirmed with her that he had died and he was deceased, and quickly kind of conferred with my sergeant away that at this point her and Tylee are now witnesses to the event and they need to be interviewed, obviously.
Okay. So it's normal for detectives to have to make death notifications?
Yes.
And you have made death notifications in other cases?
Unfortunately, yes.
And so in this case, you yourself was the one surprised to learn that you didn't have to give her a death notification.
I was.
Did her demeanor change at all when she's telling you that she was there and knew he was dead?
No.
So at this point now that you know that it's not just a death notification, she now may have relevant information, what happens at that point?
I had made a request of her that we would like to obviously talk to her, and if I could transport them back to the police station. If possible, we like to do the interviews in a more contained environment, obviously one that we can record and one that's not in the middle of a crime scene. So I had asked if her and Tylee would come back to the police station with me, and I ultimately ended up driving them, both of them, back to the police station.
Okay. Is there a special area at the police station that you took them to?
I did. I took them to what's referred to as our FAC, which is our Family Advocacy Center.
What's the difference between the FAC and, you know, maybe what people have seen on TV of just like the cold room with a table and two chairs?
So the Family Advocacy Center is a separate part of the police department. It actually has a separate entrance, and it's designed specifically for like victims of crime. We do forensic interviews of children there. It's not, there are not uniformed officers that work within that area. It's designed specifically for like victims of crime. We do use it sometimes, obviously, for witnesses. There will never be like in custody, custodial, like suspect interviews or anything in there. It's a separate section of the police department that's kind of an entity on its own.
So when you're going to interview Lori Vallow, do you have any concept sort of what she saw, what her involvement is at that point?
No.
So when you said you drove her and Tylee to the police station?
I did.
So they left their car at the scene?
They did. They came with me in my city vehicle.
Can you describe Lori's demeanor as you're driving her to the police station?
So obviously I drove. She was in the front passenger seat. Tylee was seated behind her. The majority of the drive, we were actually talking about Tylee. It's a little bit awkward because you're trying not to talk about anything that happened until you can get to the police station. So you're trying to kind of make this strange small talk almost. But we were talking primarily about Tylee and her schooling and such. But we were driving and she was just kind of chattering along as we were driving.
Did she seem stressed at all while she's talking to you?
Not really.
Did she, was she crying or emotional at all while you're driving?
No.
While you were before you left in the car, did she ever try to ask you any questions about how her brother was doing or what, you know, what's going on with her husband or anything like that?
Not of me, no.
When you got her to the police station, how long did that take, approximately?
It's probably a 20-minute drive from the house to where the station is, about.
And was she chatting away the whole time?
For the majority of it.
When you get to the police station, do you separate Lori and her daughter, Tylee?
I did.
And was that interview audio and video recorded?
It was.
Was she free to leave at any time?
Yes.
Did you know if she had a cell phone with her when you were interviewing her?
I don't believe, well, she did, she had a phone with her at one point, but she wasn't on it or doing anything.
Okay. Did she provide you with a cell phone number when you were talking to her?
In the initial part of the interview, yes. The initial part of the interview is biographical, name, date of birth, phone number, address, that type of thing.
Did you ever ask to look at her cell phone?
I did not.
Did she ever offer to show you her cell phone?
She did not.
Did you know at that point, well, let me ask you, had you been inside the scene at that point, inside the house?
So I did not go in the house until later. Prior to me coming back to the scene later, I was never inside the house.
So at that point, when you are first meeting with Lori, to driving her there, did you know if she had Charles Vallow's cell phone with her?
I did not know.
Did you sort of assume that Charles Vallow's cell phone would have been at the scene with him?
I did assume that, yes.
So I want to start with, you told us that you asked some basic biographical information. And Your Honor, if I can have my paralegal approach with Exhibit 186.
Go ahead.
Have you watched that CD, Exhibit 186, previously?
I have, yes.
Is your initial on it to identify that you've watched it?
My initials and my badge number.
And is that to identify that you recognize that as the part of the interview where you're asking Lori Vallow for biographical information?
Correct.
And that shows it's an accurate copy of that portion of the interview?
Yes.
State will move to admit Exhibit 186.
Any objection?
The only objection is to the portion, Your Honor. This is not going to be a full,
It's
just a portion of
redacted.
it.
Are you saying it's redacted?
This is only one portion of it. We're going to be going through lots of portions of it.
What was the number?
186.
186 is admitted.
And Your Honor, if I can publish it.
Go ahead.
Okay. I know Laura's your first name, right? L-A-U-R?
L-O-R-I.
Okay. And then what's your last name?
Vallow, V-A-L-L-O-W.
And your date of birth?
6/26/73.
And then your phone number?
808-755-5452.
And you live at the house, right?
I wondered if this was the same lady.
Okay. So in this portion that we see in 186, she gave you a phone number of the 808-755-5452?
Correct.
During your investigation, did you learn that Lori Vallow had more than one cell phone?
I did.
Did you learn whether or not she was employed outside the home?
I don't believe she was.
Okay. Did you ever read her Miranda rights?
No.
Why not?
She was not in custody. She was there consensually. And at the time that I was talking to her, I was talking to her as what I believe to be a witness.
Okay. Now, did you talk to her about sort of when she moved into the house, some background about her son and Charles, and that relationship?
Yes.
If my paralegal can approach with Exhibit 187.
Go ahead.
Do you recognize Exhibit 187, again, having your initials and badge number on it?
I do, yes.
And is that marked as clip 2, the portion of your interview where Lori Vallow is telling you about sort of moving into the house and some background on JJ and Charles?
That's correct.
State will move to admit 187.
Any objection?
The objection would be Rule 106, Your Honor, the rule of completeness. We would ask that the whole thing be played,
All right.
the entire video.
The objection's overruled. The exhibit's admitted.
And if we can publish it.
I do have the interviews on day 1, part
We moved
2.
into this house 3 weeks ago because he offered to get me a house here where all my family is. So we were in Houston. And so he's like, we had decided to separate or whatever. So he's like, well, I'll pay for a house for you and for JJ and whatever, because he's all about JJ. He's never about Tylee, but he's all about JJ. Because we adopted him together. He's his great nephew. We adopted him as a baby. So he was like a drug baby and had all these problems. And so we adopted him as a baby, and so we've been raising him together. And he travels all the time for business, so he's used to just going back and forth. So he's always gone like Monday through Friday. So he came when we first moved in and brought me stuff from Houston, like a U-Haul. And then he hasn't been back. But it's all these threats on my phone all the time, you know, like whatever, all these things. And then he told me... What kind of threats? Just... You'd have to read them to me, but he's always mad at me, right? And he doesn't want a divorce, but I don't like him and don't want to deal with him, so that's just how it is. So.
So I want to talk a little bit about this portion of your interview with Lori Vallow.
I shouldn't laugh. It's not funny.
She told you about the adoption of JJ by her and Charles, correct?
Correct.
And that JJ suffered from some disabilities.
That's right.
During this part of the interview, did she tell you that Charles had sent some threatening messages on the phone?
She did. She said there were threats on her phone.
Did she ever offer to show you those threats?
She did not.
So she has a phone with her, but she didn't show you anything?
No.
Did she ever explain what she meant?
No.
And we had just discussed that she had given you a phone number of 808, correct?
Correct.
And during that investigation, or this investigation, sort of in the days that followed, did you learn later that most of the communication between Charles Vallow and Lori Vallow was on one of her other cell phones, the one with a 480 area code?
I did.
So even though she gives you a totally different number, that's not the phone that you understood to have the communications between her and Charles?
Right.
Does she also say in that clip that
That's weird.
Charles Vallow didn't want a divorce from her?
That's correct.
And did she tell you that she didn't even like Charles?
Yes.
And that she didn't want to deal with him?
Yes.
Bro.
And that he traveled to just kind of get away?
Correct.
When you were talking with Lori Vallow, did she tell you that Charles had filed something against her saying she was crazy and asking to limit her supervised visitation?
That's correct.
Did she tell you that sort of in retaliation that she basically stopped talking to him and JJ for 30 days?
Correct, that he was in Houston, JJ was in Houston with Charles.
If I can have my paralegal approach with Exhibit 188.
I mean, he wasn't wrong when he called her crazy. She's batshit.
And do you recognize Exhibit 188 as also being signed and have your badge number on that?
Yes.
Meaning you've reviewed it and has identified that as that portion of your interview with Lori Vallow, including those areas of the supervised visitation.
Correct.
State will move to admit Exhibit 188.
Your Honor, we're going to object that the whole interview should be played.
All right. 188?
Oh, you want the whole interview played? Wow, that's a bold
And if we
of
can
you.
publish it.
Go ahead.
Okay.
and I didn't file anything or whatever. And then he filed something against me and said I'm only going to get supervised visits because I'm crazy and blah, 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 you know, the story. And so I just didn't talk to him for like 30 days and let him take care of him and let him see what I've been doing.
So she, I know it got cut off sort of in the end there, she told you that after he filed this paperwork saying she was only going to get supervised visits, that she just didn't talk to him for 30 days.
Correct.
Should we break?
All right, let's take our afternoon stretch break, recess, 15 minutes. Please remember the admonition.
All right, for the jury.
So I haven't had any commercials, and I'm afraid to touch anything. But I don't know that I want to talk your ear off for 15 minutes. So we'll see how far I get here. As sort of a recap, if you do want to check out those full interviews, I have them. I mean, they are available. You can Google them or YouTube them. But I also have my own comments. I think it's day 1 of court.
Juror 15 is the only member of the jury present. Juror 15, when we did a sidebar this morning with the white noise,
I'm gonna say, is this supposed to be muted? Anyway, but it's day 1 of the court, part 2, I believe. Maybe part 3. I can't remember how many parts I did for day 1. But I do have, I think it actually might be part 3. It says in my comments that I do have the police interviews between this Cassandra and in the first part, she's with Lori. And then she goes from Lori to talk to Tylee. And in this interview, like, Lori seems pretty fine. She sounds almost to me, and again, this is, you know, my non-professional opinion. I am not a therapist or a psychologist. I'm not licensed or have a degree that can, you know, formally say anything about a person's behavior or whatever. This is just my comments and my beliefs and my opinions as a lay person who is not a licensed professional. She doesn't, at some points she almost seems like jovial, like she's completely fine. It's like as if she's talking to a friend, maybe even a therapist, but even just a friend. Also, there are points where Lori doesn't sound upset in the sense that she's distraught over the man that she'd been with for 14 years is dead. More like kind of agitated. Like, he sent me these threatening, I have all these threats from him, but doesn't have anything that's, you know, solid that she can say, like, look, see, these are some of the things that he says to me. And it makes it look really bad because right after she says he's constantly threatening me, I left him with our disabled son, or our son with disabilities, not disabled, but our son with disabilities, who is a vulnerable person. I just left him with him for 30 days and kind of ghosted him so that he could handle him and see what it's like taking care of JJ. If someone is a threat to safety, if someone is a dangerous person who is unreasonable, who has violent tendencies, she tells the same person that he and Tylee, quote, got into it all the time and it was constantly physical, then leaving him alone for 30 days with a child that they adopted together that has these special needs that she says are severe, what kind of unreasonable person does that? Because she, at that point, is just stating, I neglected my son because I left him in the care with an unstable person who has anger issues. That is what she just told this woman in a nutshell. Because if a child, especially a vulnerable child with disabilities that can't really defend themselves or is very in that kind of vulnerable state of they depend on the adults taking care of them to be good people, it's not like Tylee could take care of herself. She was 16 years old. You know, she might not be as strong as Charles, but she could defend herself or be a voice for herself to say, call someone and be like, hey, this is what my stepdad is doing to me. JJ did not have that capability because, for one, I believe he was like 6, maybe 7. And for 2, he had his special needs. So he would not have been able to verbalize with anyone how he was being treated by Charles. And she knows this and still knowingly decided that it was appropriate to ghost him for a month and leave him to take care of a child so he knows what it's like. This isn't, this isn't knowing what it's like taking care of the household bills and budget. This isn't knowing what it's like taking care of cleaning a household after children. This is somebody she's saying has anger issues and has gotten physical with a minor, has gotten physical with a child, but still felt that was appropriate to leave a vulnerable child in his care for 30 days and cease communication. That's the kind of double talk that we get out of Lori. It's just unbelievable to me that she would say these things and say, oh, well, he's all about Tylee. And it's funny that she wants them to see this whole video. I want you to play it all. Of course you want them to play it all, Lori, because you want them to see you. It's all about you. Everything's about you. But even in those interviews, what she says contradicts what Tylee says. Because Lori, and I've been through this a couple of times, Lori's claim, and of course she's the only person alive. Everybody there that day is gone. JJ is gone. Tylee is gone. Charles is gone. Alex is gone. So the only person who can push the narrative right now is Lori. And according to Lori, she says that she wanted Charles out of the house right away. She didn't want him to stay around for any reason. She wanted him to take JJ to school and go. Like, take JJ and go. Take him to school, get out of here. That's what she says she wanted. But that doesn't translate well when she says, I took his phone from him. Oh, he always leaves something in the house that he has to come back and get. And in this case, it happened to be his phone. Allegedly, according to her. So she takes his phone from him, demanding to know who he's talking to. This is agitating to him because he just wanted to get his son and leave. He wanted to take him to Burger King. He wanted to take him to get breakfast before school. His chicken fries or whatever. And Lori was prohibiting him from doing that. So you go from somebody who's saying, I want him out of the house because I don't want him disrupting my peace, to I took his phone to keep him there. Because I wanted to know who he had been talking to and saw that he had been talking to my other brother. Then she made it sound like Alex and Tylee, who had been sleeping, both came out about the same time. Tylee with the bat, and Alex was shirtless and pulling up his pants over his boxers because he had been asleep. So he had been asleep, but I'm confused about what's going at the bottom. Anyway, so Alex was asleep. Where did he have this gun? Did he go back to the room to retrieve the gun? But she says they were kind of rolling around on the floor with a bat. So if they're rolling around on the floor with a bat, then where did this gun come from? Because it's a pretty, they've shown it in court. It's a pretty sizable weapon. It's not like a very small gun, like, a pocket revolver or whatever. It was, a decent size. So it's not like he was walking around with it in his jean pocket or in his boxers. Like, he would have had to go to the room to get that gun, or the gun was readily available because he had a whole gun bag for it and it was loaded. And then it was also brought up by one of the, and of course Lori didn't like this, in the line of questioning, okay, well, he brought a gun with multiple rounds that was loaded into a house with a special needs child who's under the age of 7. Was that a smart decision? Like, I don't understand what that choice was. It is a questionable decision. Why would you have a gun that isn't secured? It was just in a bag. It wasn't a locked bag. It was in a bag in a case that didn't have locks on it. An unsecured bag with a small special needs child that's curious and going to probably get into things that, you know, doesn't belong to them because they don't know boundaries and limitations like we would. Prosecutors allege Rice fatally stabbed Knudsen in their Minot, North Dakota apartment. I thought that trial was over. I thought she was found not guilty. The trial relocated to Grand Forks County due to concerns over finding an impartial jury is set to last 3 weeks. If convicted, Rice faces life in prison for the brutal killing. Stay tuned for live coverage as this long-awaited trial unfolds. What? Nicole Rice is standing trial for the 2007 murder of her roommate, Anita Knudsen, after a 15-year investigation. Is this old? This thing scrolling at the bottom doesn't make sense because I watched part of that trial and I thought she was found not guilty. I'm sorry, I'm looking this up for a second because yeah, Court TV. Nicole Rice, 37, was charged with felony murder in the death of Anita Knudsen, who was found stabbed to death on June 4th, 2007. A jury found her not guilty of a single charge. At the time of the murder, the two women lived together, though friends said the two had strained relationship. Knudsen's body was found by her father. Police cited Rice's inconsistent statements when they arrested her in 2022. On 3/26/25, the jury finds Nicole Rice not guilty of felony murder. As the jury's verdict was read, Rice's family members erupted in cheers in the courtroom, which is sad because, like, I get being glad that your loved one hasn't been found guilty. Like, that's really horrible. Her roommate was murdered. Like, have some class, have some dignity, have some respect. That's disgusting. So I'm confused why it says Nicole Rice is standing trial because this is from last week and her trial was done a month ago. So I don't know if this is accidental. Yeah, all I'm saying is from March. So I don't know why they're scrolling this at the bottom. That's weird. That's confusing. Anyway, back to why I'm really here. Lori Vallow. I don't know how long they've been gone. I'm really afraid to fast forward because I don't want to hit a commercial again. I just find her insufferable, and this is, I mean, the prosecution at this point has more than substantiated the claim that this was a conspiracy, that Lori did want Charles dead. Lori did want the insurance money. I don't see the jury taking long to deliberate, especially since And again, I said this yesterday, not having a defense in the sense that Lori does not, at this point, this could change this afternoon, does not want to take the stand. She doesn't have to. And apparently she's not calling any witnesses. Again, she doesn't have to. The jury can't decide she's guilty based on lack of that type of defense. However, every question she's asked was either completely pointless or actually helped the prosecution. For example, I said it yesterday, the marks left on the skin from the gun firing and hitting and exiting the shoulder left marks on the skin because he was already up against a hard surface, which would have been the floor. And she kept bringing up Charles having a bamboo shirt. Well, it was determined that those same marks, I forgot what they're called, my brain isn't processing that, were not at both exit wounds. It was only the shoulder exit wound, not the one that went through the heart. So had it been both, it could have been argued that yes, it was caused by the tightness of the shirt. But it was just a t-shirt. It might be a stronger fabric, but it's still just a t-shirt. It's not a belt, it's not a bra, it's not even one of those, those shapewear undergarments that might, because they're so tight fitting, one of those might have left those marks. But because it was just funny, she kept talking about this bamboo shirt and it was just ridiculous. Lori, she's something else. Trying to think of what else I wanted to touch on. The life insurance policy I started talking about earlier, and her having the audacity to say that he was shot accidentally. They had 5 kids, but only 3 of them were adults. Then using his computer, that's what I was going for. She used his computer to look at the changed policy to hold it against Kay. She had no business going through that stuff. And it goes again with the entitlement of Lori. Lori thinks that she is entitled to money that belonged to Charles. She thinks that she was entitled to his belongings. She took everything of value, his watch collection, the things that other people would have looked at wanted for sentimental reasons, and probably sold them because she felt she was entitled to all of that. Not thinking of the fact or caring that he had 2 grown sons who might have liked some of those watches or might have liked some of the things that belonged to Charles. That wasn't her right to do. Yes, legally, nobody could do anything because as his wife, she had even though they were separated on paper, she was his wife, so she had the right to do whatever she wanted with his stuff. But to tell his sister, oh, you can come get things that belong to Charles, and yet anything that was of value was gone. She took it upon herself to take what was of value and left pieces of furniture and different random things that didn't even belong to Charles. A good person, the right person, this would have happened anyway, but we're just going to go with a person with any moral fiber or character at all would have been like, we were separated. Would have been reasonable. Look, we're separated. I'm not entitled to any of his stuff. I'm going to give it to family, not Lori. Not Lori. Lori is entitled to whatever Lori wants.
Sorry about that. You're right about that. Just.
Okay.
All right, let's bring the jury in.
There it is. Okay. I was confused for a second.
Present, please be seated. Go ahead and continue your direct.
Thank you. So Detective, when we broke, we had just watched Exhibit 188, a portion of your interview where Lori Vallow was telling you that Charles had filed something against her, saying she was crazy and asking to limit her to supervised visitation. Did you understand or know what that was about at that time?
I did not.
Did you talk to Lori Vallow about sort of Charles coming into town?
Yes,
So you understood that he did not live here in Phoenix?
I did.
And did she talk to you about booking a room for Charles and that he was going to come out and see JJ, his son?
Yes.
If my paralegal can approach with Exhibit 189.
Go ahead.
And do you recognize Exhibit 189, again, that says Clip 4 with both your signature and badge?
Yes.
And is that the portion of the interview where you are talking to Lori about Charles coming into town, him traveling and coming here to see JJ?
It is.
State will move to admit 189.
Any objection?
Will object, Your Honor. The defense will on Rule 106 of completion. Ask that the whole interview just be played.
All right. Was it 109?
189.
I'm sorry, 189 is admitted.
And if we could publish it.
She wants that because she wants the parts about Tylee mentioned. Because Tylee is unavailable as a witness because of Lori, but you know.
The time because he travels for business and the business pays for it, right? So I said, I will book you a hotel nearby.
What does he do?
He works with teachers and their retirement plans, but he goes to them at their school. He mostly works in California.
Okay.
No.
That's gonna make her so mad. She's probably fuming.
That's the full clip? Okay. So she advised that she booked a hotel for him.
So the audio wasn't on initially when that played,
Okay.
but there is a portion in the interview where she does tell me that.
Where she says, I'll book you a hotel.
Correct.
During your interview, did Lori Vallow tell you that Charles traveled a lot for his work?
Yes.
And did she tell you that his travel was an excuse not to care for his son?
Yes, that he was gone a lot.
Did Lori Vallow tell you that she had left Charles Vallow in Texas and moved back to Arizona?
That's correct.
And did she tell you that Charles was still living in Texas?
Yes, in the Houston area.
Did she say that Charles had rented her a house for her and JJ and her daughter Tylee to live.
Correct.
Did you talk to her about whether or not she had an interaction with Charles the night before, on
Yes.
July 10th? And did she advise that it was just limited to a text message?
Correct, not in person, just via the phone.
Okay. My paralegal can approach with Exhibit 190. And do you recognize that, again, with your initials and badge number,
Correct.
as a portion of your interview where Lori Vallow was telling you that Charles was not at the house that night, he just let her know he'd be over at 7:30 the next morning?
That's right.
State will move to admit 190.
Same objection?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Right, 190 is admitted.
Again, she wants that whole video because she wants her comments about Tylee in there, and they're not going to do it. It's not her fault she's unavailable as a witness. Yes, it is.
It's kind of his macho attitude. And so he came this morning, I was getting JJ ready.
So he got in last night, but he wasn't at the house last night?
Yeah, I didn't hear from him, except for he texted me and said, I'll be there at 7:30 to pick up JJ.
He was on a date. He was on a date.
You understood that she had no interaction with Charles on July 10th.
In person, correct.
But she knew what time to expect Charles the next morning on July 11th at 7:30.
Right.
When you were talking with her, did you talk to her about what time Charles actually showed up?
Yes.
And did she say 7:40, 7:35-ish?
I believe she said 7:35.
My paralegal can approach with Exhibit 191.
Go ahead.
And again, do you recognize Exhibit 191 as having been initialed and have your badge number on it?
I do.
And is that in clip number 6, the portion of your interview where she's talking about what time Charles showed up that morning?
Correct.
State will move to admit 191.
Same objection?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense objects.
All right, 191 is admitted.
And if we can publish.
I love how he's acknowledging it but not caring. This is me not caring, Lori.
So,
Do you remember about what time he got there?
he said he'd be there at 7:30, but it was more like 7:40-ish or 7:35, I don't know.
Okay.
But I remember thinking, looking at the clock, and he wasn't there at 7:30, and he's usually Mr.
Yeah.
Punctual. Yes.
So at this point, you understand that Lori Vallow knew Charles was coming to Arizona,
Correct.
and she knew he was going to show up on the 11th at 7:30 a.m.,
Correct.
and that he was coming there to pick up their son, JJ.
Yes.
Did the defendant talk to you about when Charles shows up, sort of how they get JJ in the car, and that she goes out to the car with Charles and JJ, and then that she ultimately ends up with Charles's cell phone?
That's right.
My paralegal can approach with Exhibit 192. And do you again recognize that with your initials and your badge number?
I do.
Clip number 7, a portion of the interview where you are being told by Lori Vallow that she put JJ in the car, and eventually how she got Charles's phone?
Correct.
State will move to admit 192.
Same objection?
The defense will object to 106.
192. 192.
I'm sorry. The Rule 106 is the objection. I'm sorry.
Got you. All right, 192 is admitted.
They can't do it all. They have to
And
break
if I
it down.
publish.
She
Go
should
ahead.
know that if she was a lawyer.
You know, he's just been difficult, so.
Yeah.
Anyway. So I got Jay to separated, and he was like, well, and he's like this about timing. He's like, I'm leaving in 20 minutes, because it's like 15 minutes to the school, and like you can't get there early, they don't open the gates until at 8:20 or something like that. And I said, well, why don't you just go now? I don't want him in the house. I'm like, why don't you just go now and take him to Burger King, because that's what he likes for breakfast. And he's very particular about food. Like, he wanted chicken fries for breakfast and the Sprite. Like, and I just get what he wants, because if you don't get what he wants, then it's like on the floor screaming, dragging him, and just go like, and he's big and he's heavy and it's hard for me to handle. But anyway, so I said, just go. And so he said, okay. So I gave him a backpack. He got in the car. This is his MO, right? He always leaves something in the house and comes back. He never leaves the first time. I always expect my husband to come back into the house, right? So I guess he had left his phone on the counter.
So he initially left with the backpack and with JJ?
And so he put them in the car, in the driveway, and then he came back in, right? So I kissed JJ goodbye. He came back in, and his phone was on the counter, and I had his phone. And he was like, give me my phone. And I was like, why don't you show me your text that you've been texting, blah, 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 you know, whatever. Because he's like, acting really weird, like he's plotting something against me. Like, I'm like, why are you even here? Like, what did you come here for, you know? He's been talking to my other brother, and my brother came into town at the same time last night. And I haven't talked to my brother in a while, my other brother, and I was like, and so he was texting him on the phone when he first got to my house, and I'm like, why are you texting Adam? Like, do you even talk to him? Like, my other brother.
So in this portion, Lori Vallow told you that she kissed JJ goodbye and Charles took JJ in the backpack out to the car,
Correct.
and that she went inside and got a hold of Charles's cell phone.
Correct.
And did she tell you that Charles came back inside and saw her with the phone and told her to give it back to him?
That's right.
Did Lori Vallow ever tell you that she gave the phone back to Charles?
She did not.
So Lori Vallow is telling you that Charles is demanding the phone back, and she instead says, show me your text messages?
Correct.
Say it, say it, say it, say it. None of her business.
We heard previously that Lori Vallow had told you that Charles had taken JJ away from her for 30 days, and so she didn't talk to him, right?
That he had JJ for 30 days and they didn't talk, yes.
And so now she's telling you she's demanding to know why he's in Arizona? Why he came to Arizona? Is that what she said? Why are you even here?
I believe so, yes.
So Charles had to take care of his son, and now he's here to visit his son?
Correct.
Is what
Correct.
she even said.
Yes.
So did she tell you that she had confronted Charles about texting her brother, Adam,
In
this portion of the interview?
In the portion of the interview, she discusses with me, asking Charles why he's talking to her brother, Adam.
And were you aware at this time, when you are interviewing Lori Vallow, that Charles and Adam had been texting?
No,
Did you even know who Adam was at that point?
I didn't know who Adam was.
And so, and again, I think you told us you were not aware at that time that Lori Vallow was in possession of Charles Vallow's phone.
Correct.
And were you aware at that time that Charles had flown Adam in?
No.
So you're just kind of hearing this and listening to what she's saying.
Correct.
Did you go into some additional detail about, again, Charles demanding that Lori Vallow give him back his cell phone?
Yes.
I can have my paralegal approach with clip 197.
Go ahead.
Same objection,
It was out of order.
that they can't do all at once. It's too much.
Do you recognize Exhibit 197, Clip 8?
I do.
And again, did you initial and put your badge number on that?
I did.
And did that reflect, again, another portion of your interview where Lori Vallow is describing to you what is going on when Charles Vallow is demanding his phone back, what she does?
Correct.
State will move to admit Exhibit 197.
Same objection.
Defense will object to playing the whole video, Your Honor.
197?
Yes,
197's admitted.
and if we may publish.
Go ahead.
And 14.
Okay. So this morning he comes back in
He
and,
comes back in, I wouldn't give him his phone, he was screaming at me to give him his phone. He was very worried about whatever was on his text that he did not want me to see. And so I was just holding it there and he was screaming at me. And I was kind of walking towards around the house with it so he couldn't get it. He's like reaching for it and stuff like that.
So this is the second time that Lori Vallow is telling you that Charles is telling her to give him back his phone,
Correct.
and she is refusing to do so.
Yes.
And she advised that she was walking around the house, right?
Correct.
So he's screaming at her, and she's walking around.
Correct.
Haunting him. Like a red flag and a bowl.
During this initial confrontation over the phone, does Lori Vallow tell you it's just her and Charles?
Yes.
And so did you ever ask her why she didn't just give the phone back to Charles so he could take JJ to school?
I did not.
During your interview with Lori Vallow, did she tell you at some point that since she wouldn't give Charles back the phone and he's screaming at her, that her daughter Tylee and her brother Alex came out?
She did.
Did she tell you that her daughter Tylee came out with a bat?
She did.
Did she tell you that Tylee sort of poked at Charles with the bat
Yes.
while she and Charles were arguing?
Correct.
And did she tell you that Charles took the bat away from Tylee and Tylee sort of fell back or something?
Correct.
She ended up on the floor.
Correct.
And that Lori then told her to go outside to JJ.
Yes.
Did Lori Vallow ever tell you why her brother Alex Cox brought a loaded gun to her house?
She did not.
Did she tell you that she had asked Alex to come over to the house?
She did.
Did she ever tell you, well, let me say, so when she talked to you, she told you that she had wanted Alex to be there sort of to protect her in case anything went bad, right?
Correct.
So did she tell you why Alex didn't go to the door with her when Charles is pounding on the door being a jerk or whatever?
She did not.
So she didn't explain why the gun was there or why Alex wasn't part of this initial phone argument?
Correct.
Did Lori ever tell you during your interview that Charles started this argument?
No.
During your interview of Lori Vallow, was it always her saying that it was her that started this argument because she would not give Charles back his phone?
Correct.
So she told you that she was afraid of Charles coming over, invited her brother over to protect her, and then she started a fight by refusing to give Charles back his phone.
Correct.
During this interview, did Lori tell you that after Tylee went out to be with JJ, that Charles came at her with a bat?
Yes.
And that she moved into the kitchen and that while she was not able to see what was going on, she hears a shot?
That's correct.
If I can have my paralegal approach with Exhibit 193. clip 9. Do you recognize Exhibit 193?
I do.
Did you initial and put your ID on that?
I did.
And is that a portion of this of your interview with Lori Vallow, where she talks about what her brother is doing and Charles is doing, and her walking around into the kitchen with the phone?
Yes.
The state will move to admit Exhibit 193.
Same objection, Your Honor.
All right, 193 submitted.
And if we may publish.
Go ahead.
Yeah, she was outside, and
what happened?
then they got up from that, and my brother had like stepped back, I guess, and then Charles was coming with me to that and yelling at me to give him his phone still, because I had it in my hand. It was all really quickly, and then when I went around kind of in the circle, then my brother was there.
When you said when you were going around and he was coming at you with the bat, how was he holding the bat?
Just like that, like backwards, almost in one arm.
Like he was swinging it backwards? He would have done
Like he would have swung it backwards at me, not frontwards.
Okay.
One second. So in this clip, she's describing to you how Charles was swinging the bat at her, correct?
Correct.
And in that clip, let me ask you this, does she go on to talk to you about whether or not her husband was a semi-professional baseball player?
She did, yes.
And she told you that, again, Charles is holding a bat and yelling at her to give him his phone?
Correct.
And she didn't give him back the phone?
She did not.
Did she talk to you about whether or not she saw the shot?
Yes.
Did she say she saw it or not?
She did not see the shot. She heard the shot.
So she indicated she does not. Did she indicate whether or not she saw her brother pull out a gun?
No.
Did she indicate whether or not she saw her brother go get a gun?
She did not.
Did she indicate how many shots she heard?
She specifically said the shot, as in one shot.
Did you at some point, well, let me ask again. So you had not been into this residence yet?
No.
So when she's telling you she's going around, did you understand what that was?
Not really, because I hadn't been inside. She was kind of describing the kitchen and the room they were in, but I hadn't seen it firsthand.
Okay. When you were talking to Lori Vallow, did you ask her if Charles or her brother Alex had said anything before Alex shot Charles?
Yes.
And did she indicate she doesn't recall hearing that?
Correct.
And if my paralegal can approach with Exhibit 195, clip 11. Do you recognize Exhibit 195?
I do.
And again, it's your initials and badge on that.
It is.
And is that portion of the interview where you asked her if she'd heard anything said between Charles and Alex prior to the shooting?
Correct.
State will move to admit 195.
Same objection.
Same objection, Your Honor.
195 is admitted.
And if we may publish.
I gotta get to the kids. And so I just went outside and to see if they were in there okay. I didn't want them coming back in the house when all that was going on. And got Gigi in the car, and he was trying to come in, and Tylee was like looking at me.
That's actually the wrong one. Well, play that one, I guess. Let me see, and we'll talk about that one since admitted. Okay.
We're gonna play that one?
Yeah, we'll play it and talk about it.
I gotta get to the kids. And so I just went outside and to see if they were in there okay. I didn't want them coming back in the house when all that was going on. And got Gigi in the car, and he was trying to come in, and Tylee was like looking at me with like the crazy eyes, like what just happened. And I told her to get in the car and we're gonna take Gigi to school. And I just left.
When you came back in and you saw him on the ground, where was your brother? Did you see him where he was at?
Yeah, he was right in front of him.
Okay.
So in exhibit, what we have is 195. Is that actually then the portion where she's talking about what she did after as well as what Alex was doing when she went back in there?
Correct.
So she advised you that after she heard this shot, she just left
She did. She went outside.
and then drove off in Charles's rental car?
Correct.
And she told you that when she saw Charles on the floor, Alex was standing in front of him.
Correct.
Did you ask her to describe any distance of how far away?
I did not.
And then if we can approach then with, what is code number? I think that is exhibit 194. Is that, again, a portion of this interview where we're talking about the shots, actually?
Correct.
And you watched that previously and initialed it and put your badge number on it?
I did.
Okay, we'll move to admit 194.
Same objection, Your Honor.
194 is admitted.
Okay, yeah.
He was a professional baseball player.
Okay.
So it wasn't a good idea for Tylee to get out of the house.
Probably not the.
I mean, he played semi-pro
Yeah.
when he was young. But, yeah, and then I was kind of turned around, and we were all right there in that room, except for the kids had been outside by that time, and I heard the gunshot. And
So you heard the shot? Did you actually see the shot, or did you just hear it?
I had gone around to the kitchen to get away from him, and so back around. So I don't know if he went in the house.
I didn't, so I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, so I didn't see the shot. I heard it, and then I came back around and I saw that he was on the ground.
Okay. So, again, that's the portion where she is advising you that she only heard the shot but didn't see the shot.
Correct.
So she's advising you she doesn't know what her brother was doing.
Reasonably, yes.
During this whole interview that you had with Lori Vallow, did she ever tell you that she handed over the phone to Charles?
She did not, no.
So during the initial confrontation, when it's just her and Charles and he's demanding her phone, she won't give it back to him.
Correct.
When her daughter comes out and involves herself in this altercation, she wouldn't give him back the phone.
Correct.
And she advised that he's still at that point demanding his phone.
Yes.
And again, he's there to take JJ to school, right?
Right.
And then her brother comes out, and again, he's demanding the phone, and she still won't give it to him.
Correct.
Did she ever explain to you why she didn't just hand the phone back over?
She did not, no.
If I can have my paralegal approach with 286. Have you looked at Exhibit 286 before?
I have.
And is your initials and badge on that?
It is, yes.
And is that a copy of the full interview?
It is, yes.
So it includes whatever conversations you had about, throughout that, about Charles Vallow and her views on him?
Yes.
And repeatedly that she never gave the phone back to Charles Vallow?
That's right.
State will move to admit 286.
Same objection.
Same objection, Your Honor.
286 is admitted.
I love the blatant disregard. Yeah, same objection, just don't care. That's fun.
Did Lori Vallow ever call 911?
She did not.
Not playing it. Yeah, never mind. Do you know who called 911?
I believe Alex Cox called 911.
We've discussed that she had multiple cell phones, correct?
Correct.
And so, did you later learn that she also had Charles Vallow's cell phone?
I did.
So she has at least 2 cell phones with her, but she did not call 911.
That's correct.
After you interviewed Lori, did you have to get her and Tylee back to where the car was?
I did, yes.
Did you and someone else drive her, Tylee, and Alex Cox back?
Myself and, at the time, Detective, but now Lieutenant Moffett did.
So can you tell us about that?
So the interviews were concluded, and we were going to get them back to the house. The search warrant was still ongoing at the house, but to get them back to get vehicles, they weren't in custody. So I obtained our victim services has a minivan because it just holds a lot of people. And we used the minivan to take everyone back to the scene instead of driving 2 different cars with people. So I drove and Detective Moffett sat in the very back. Tylee was sitting up front with me and Lori and Alex were behind me.
Okay. What was Lori's demeanor in the car with her brother and you and Moffett?
She was unaffected, not emotional. The best description I can give is that she chattered the whole way, basically back to the house. Not upset, almost not happy, but just really unaffected by everything that was going on. It was kind of striking.
Is there any acknowledgement about what had happened?
No.
Basically just talking like it was any other day?
That's a good description, yes.
Did you ever hear her talk about or say anything like, oh, I need to let Charles Vallow's sons know that he's dead?
No, not specifically. She had referenced at one point, like, calling people, but not that she needed to, like, do additional, like, death notification.
When you got back to the 5531 South Four Peaks place, did you see Lori, Alex, and Tylee leave in that red Kia SUV?
They did. They left in the rental car.
Okay. What did you do initially after that?
So that was the first time that I came into the house. I came just into basically the threshold first part of that room. Detective Coons and Detective Duncan were finishing the search warrant, and they were talking about some of the things that they had found. And there was some initial kind of discussion between us, and then I ultimately left because I had a different case to go work on. So I left to go do something else.
Did you go back to the police station?
I did.
Around 2 or so, did you get a call to see if you could help find Lori or Alex to come back to the house?
Yes. The detectives that were at the scene that were done doing, they were finishing the scene investigation. They were wondering if I could try to get in touch with Lori or Alex to try to get them to come back to the scene because their intention was to try to do a walkthrough and some additional investigation. So I made a couple phone calls to the number that Lori had provided to me.
So you made more than one call to that 808 number?
I believe 2.
Did you leave a message?
I left a message, yes.
Okay. After you had called and tried to reach her, what did you do?
I ended up going back to the scene very briefly while they were finishing, and at that point, Alex had come back to the scene. Lori and Tylee were present with that red rental car again, and I was outside, and the other detectives were inside finishing up crime scene work.
Okay. Did you ever learn from Detective Coons or Duncan that they had searched the house and they couldn't find Charles's cell phone?
When I went back the second time, the detectives on scene, Coons and Duncan, had said that they couldn't find his phone.
And you had interviewed Lori, so you knew that at some point she'd had it, right?
Correct.
And she had, in fact, told you multiple times that she had refused to give it back to Charles, right?
That's correct.
But you had never asked her, do you still have it?
I did not.
So you're at the house, you see Lori and Tylee. Did you go ask her about it?
I did.
So can you tell us about that?
I walked up to where the vehicle had pulled up. Tylee was actually still inside the car, and I asked them if they knew where Charles's phone was. And at that point, they volunteered that they had the phone. I believe Tylee pulled it out of the cup holder to hand to me, and I asked them if they knew what the passcode to the phone was, and both of them were able to give me the passcode, and I took custody of the phone from them.
Did Lori tell you anything about where she found the phone?
I think she said that she found the phone in the car.
Okay. When you were asking her about her now deceased husband's phone that she found in the car, what is her demeanor like when she's interacting with you again here?
It's the same that it's been the whole time. Pretty calm and kind of unaffected by what's going on.
Did it seem odd to you that she said that she found that inside his car when she was talking to you about having it in her hands and refusing to give it to Charles?
It struck me as a little odd, yes.
So they give you the phone and you said that you were able to get the passcode or PIN for it. Did Lori say she knew it as well?
Lori and Tylee.
And what was the passcode?
I believe it was all zeros.
Okay.
So
Did
they
you ever
changed
check
it,
to see if they would
maybe?
open the phone?
I did not.
Did you later give Charles's phone to be given to Detective McDonald?
I did.
Interesting.
approach with 245.
I can't imagine
Do you
his passcode being a
remember
bunch
or
of
know
zeros. That's weird.
Recognize what Exhibit 245 is?
I do.
And what is that?
So this is evidence item 131035-1, and it's a cell phone in a black case. And then it's kind of common practice, the passcode's on a sticky on the phone.
Is that the phone that was given to you by Tylee with Lori there?
I believe so, yes.
Did you provide that to Officer Allness to then give it to a Detective McDonald?
So Sergeant Ulness, at the time of this, was the sergeant over our computer crime section, which is where Detective McDonald worked. And it's common practice for us to turn over items to them so they can do exams.
And does that phone have the number for this case and other information to indicate to you that it is the phone that you got from Lori Vallow and or Tylee?
It does.
So each case, is there a specific number? Each case has their own DR number or incident number?
So each investigation will have their own DR number, and then our evidence, each item generates its own unique evidence item number, and those numbers are associated specifically with the specific report number.
And does that then tie in specifically to the phone that we've been discussing that belonged to Charles Vallow?
Correct.
The phone that Lori had talked to you about as the whole reason this whole incident occurred?
Right.
The state will move to admit 245.
Any objection?
No objection.
I just had a really
245 's
dark
admitted.
thought. Did they unlock his phone
Did you
with his
later
face?
then submit a request to have an examination or extraction done of Charles's cell phone?
Correct.
And then they changed the passcode?
And then you said you used the sticky on the front to let them know how to get into it.
Correct. We'll put it, if we know it, we'll put it in the request, but oftentimes we'll put it directly with the phone also.
I have no other questions for this witness, Your Honor.
All right, Cross.
Detective Inkland, who was the case agent on July 11th, 2019?
That would have been Detective Moffett, who's now Lieutenant Moffett.
Okay. And then when did Detective Duncan, when did the switch happen from Detective Moffett to Detective Duncan being the case agent? Do you know?
When Detective Moffett was promoted to Sergeant Moffett, once you're promoted, you go back to patrol as a supervisor. So when you leave the unit, we reassign case officer responsibility to a detective that's currently inside the unit. So if somebody retires or promotes, that case agent responsibility would shift over to someone else.
Okay. Do you know when that was about?
I don't.
Was it like sometime in that year, 2019, or much later?
I don't know.
Okay. You had talked about when you got the call to come and respond to the house on July 11th. About what time was that?
It was probably about 10 or 15 minutes after the initial radio traffic. I just remember I was on the 202 going westbound and my phone rang.
And when you showed up, you had stated that Alex was seated on the curb, is that correct?
He was the first time I noticed him, yes.
And you also stated that an adult female and Tylee were already across the street when you arrived?
No,
Oh, we weren't there yet.
no.
Okay. How long after you arrived did we arrive?
I don't know when you arrived. I just became aware of you at some point. I did not see you arrive. You were not there when I got there, but at some point you got there and I became aware of you outside.
Okay. But you weren't in the house, correct?
No.
In the morning? So where were you that you didn't see us coming up at that, in between that time?
I was in front of the house.
And was your view obscured by something?
I don't believe so.
So you didn't see us drive up, you just noticed us being there at some point?
Correct.
Okay. And when you first saw us, what were we doing? Were we talking to the officer
I believe so.
or waiting to talk to the officer?
When I first saw you, Officer Krautheim was standing with you, and it appeared like you were all talking together. I couldn't hear you from where I was at. I just noticed you.
Okay, so you saw him talking to us, but you didn't see us initially come up before when he told us to stay where we were. You didn't see that
Oh my
part.
God, no. She said that.
I just became aware of you standing there.
Good grief.
And you talked about my demeanor, right? Being ordinary. Is that what you said?
Yep.
Being ordinary?
You said ordinary, non-emotional, nonchalant.
Correct.
Yeah, fair.
What's your definition of nonchalant?
Pretty almost detached, just calm, doesn't really matter, kind of not extraordinary.
Do you have a degree in psychology?
I do not.
Do you know what a person should act like if they're in a stressful situation?
Oh my Lord. Not like you.
So there isn't one way to act. There's just behavior that is striking.
Striking behavior.
Correct.
Okay. At some point when you came over to talk to me and my daughter, did we express to you that she needed her medications that were in the house?
I believe so, and that.
And what did you instruct us about?
At one point, I advised the detectives that were inside of that request, but that a search warrant was happening inside the house, so we would do our best to facilitate people getting things from the house. But the search warrant's going to take precedence to what's going on.
Right, so basically that it's a crime scene and we can't really enter, but someone would try to get them for her?
Correct.
Obviously.
Okay. And did someone go and get them for her?
At that point, we did not have a search warrant. We weren't going to be entering the house or removing any items from the house. We didn't have legal authority to go in and remove items without a search warrant. So nothing was going to be removed from the house at that point.
But you were aware that she needed her panic attack medicine?
I was
Objection as to testifying and asked and answered.
She's not allowed to ask about Tylee stuff.
Sustained, you can ask her if she was aware that she needed that medication.
You were aware that she needed her medication?
I was aware you made a request for her medication.
And it would have been non-emotional if I was trying to be calm for my daughter?
Oh, whatever, lady.
I object to speculation.
Sustained.
You were super calm in that interrogation room and Tylee wasn't there.
I believe so.
Was Officer Krautheim being calm?
I think so.
Were the firefighters being calm?
I didn't see the firefighters or have any interaction with them.
Were the other detectives being calm?
I believe so.
The EMS guys were being calm?
Again, I didn't see them and have any interaction with them.
They didn't pull the trigger either.
But it was a pretty calm environment that day, was it not?
I don't know if I'd agree with that, but
Well, no one was running around hysterical, right?
correct.
That would be unprofessional, but okay. Pointless questions.
The information that you received from the briefing, was that from Officer, is it Krautheim? Sorry, no.
Krautheim.
Krautheim. Okay, thank you. Was Officer Krautheim the one that gave you the briefing on what had happened?
So Officer Krautheim and Officer Wisbicki, who Sergeant Wisbicki now, provided information to the detectives and my sergeant that had arrived.
And then who briefed you personally?
So it's a kind of a collective conversation where the initial information is provided and then we start doing assignments, basically.
Right, so Officer, sorry, say his name one more time.
Krautheim.
Krautheim, okay. I'm gonna write that in phonetically.
And again,
I'm
she's
sorry.
laughing like this isn't funny, lady.
So
Crazy.
he was wearing a body cam, is that correct, that day? Officer Krautheim?
Correct.
And so was that briefing on body cam?
I don't know.
Now you talked about the death notification to me and to Tylee. You said that Tylee and I were in the van. Is that correct?
Correct, when I came over to talk to you.
And who was with you?
My sergeant, Sergeant Lockwood.
And was Detective Moffat not with you as well?
He was not.
And so you had stated that you had asked me to get out of the van? Is that correct?
I was trying to get you to come, my intention was to get you to come out of the van, and then you made a statement that you were there, you already knew.
What did you say that made me say that I was already there?
I was asking you to step out of the van, and you said, I was there, I already know.
I already know what?
That Charles had died. I was trying not to tell you in front of your daughter.
That would have been nice, but that wasn't the point. How did I know you were coming to give me a death notification?
Can I object to speculation?
Sustained.
Did you notify me that I'm going to give you a death notification? I don't want to do it in front of your daughter? What did you say?
It would be slightly redundant to tell you I was doing a death notification if I didn't want to tell you in front of your daughter.
Why would I say to you, I already know?
Sustained, that's, the form of the question calls for her to speculate about your state of mind.
So did you speak to me giving me a death notification, or was it Lockwood, sorry. Who spoke to us?
We were both involved in the conversation.
And what was said to us?
You said that you were there and you already knew. And at that point, shortly thereafter, I asked you if you and Tylee would come back to the station to do interviews so I could talk with you.
You asked us if we would come, or you said we're going to go down to the station and interview you?
I asked you if you would come. It was a consensual contact. It was a voluntary interview.
And is this on body cam?
I did not have a body cam at the time, no.
Did Lockwood have a body cam?
He did not. He was assigned to investigations.
So we voluntarily went to the station, is that correct?
Correct.
And you drove, is that correct?
I did.
And it was a 20 or so minute drive?
About that.
And we arrived at the station, and you separated us into two rooms, is that correct?
Correct.
And did you ask me permission to speak to my minor daughter?
I indicated to you that I wanted to interview both of you and that we would go do the interviews in the Family Advocacy Center.
And what is the protocol for interviewing a minor?
It depends on the circumstances where you're interviewing them.
Okay, and are you a certified forensic interview of children?
I am.
And so would that be something that you would ask the parent if you could interview the minor child?
It depends on the circumstances.
Okay, and did you ask me?
I did not specifically ask your permission.
Did you ask Tylee if she wanted to be interviewed?
I'm going to object to hearsay.
Well, the question, I'll overrule the objection. The question is, did you ask Tylee yes or no?
I did at one point ask if I could speak with her.
Did either of us know that we were being videotaped?
I don't know.
Were we told that we were being videotaped?
No.
At that time, when we entered into the rooms, you left Tylee in there alone and came in to interview me, is that correct?
Correct.
And how long was that interview that you and I had?
I think it's about 35, 40 minutes, maybe a little longer.
And so that whole time, Tylee was in the room by herself,
Correct.
not knowing she was being videoed? Correct.
I don't know if she knew or not.
And without her medication? Correct.
I don't know, but I believe so.
And I was worried about her, if you recall. Is that correct?
Object to relevance.
Sustained.
Do you always wear your gun when you are doing a forensic interview of a child?
The majority of the time now, yes, because my assignment's different. When my assignment was in our family violence unit and I was doing forensic interviews of child victims, then no.
Did you treat us like we were victims that day?
Actually, yes.
And did you think that wearing your gun might be intimidating to a child?
Oh, my Lanta.
No, given her age, no.
How about taking an
Is that your
unsecured
normal
gun into a
protocol?
house? But whatever.
I object, asked and answered.
She can answer. Overruled.
For which part?
For wearing your gun doing a forensic interview of a child?
So I wasn't doing a DFI of Tylee. I was doing an interview with a witness to a scene. If it was a DFI, it would be different.
How would it be different?
So a dedicated forensic interview of a child is much different. It's structured much different. It's conducted much differently, and they're typically done of victims of very specific allegations. Physical child abuse, sexual child abuse, things along those lines. The interview with Tylee was done basically as a witness interview. I did defer some to almost like a victim status, but her interview wasn't a DFI. It wasn't done as a dedicated forensic interview. She was a witness, a potential witness to a homicide.
How long did you interview Tylee for?
I believe we talked for about similar amount of time, 30, 40 minutes.
At the time, that day on July 11th, did you believe Tylee?
I'm going to object.
Sustained.
With your experience in forensically interviewing children, did you think Tylee's demeanor was genuine that day?
I'm going to object to speculation.
Sustained.
Did you have a reason to think that she might be making something up?
I'm going to object again to speculation.
You shouldn't be allowed to ask any of these questions about Tylee, to be honest, because this was the whole reason for her not being able to
Did you
use
learn during Tylee's interview?
the interview.
I'm going to object right there to hearsay.
Sustained.
Did you learn during my interview that Tylee came in with a bat?
I did.
And was that confirmed by Tylee?
I'm going to object, Your Honor, pretrial ruling
yeah.
hearsay.
Sustained.
Your Honor, can we have a sidebar?
No, that's hearsay. It's sustained.
At the end of our interviews, Detective Inklin, where did you put us?
You stayed in the Family Advocacy Center until we were ready to leave.
And did you put us in a room with a victim's advocate?
I did.
And introduce us to her?
I did.
And we spoke to her?
I believe so, yes.
And then after however long that was, then you came in with my brother Alex, is that correct?
We met them outside of the Family Advocacy Center, and then we left to go back to the house.
And you stated that I chatted the whole way back, is that correct?
You did.
It wasn't Tylee and Alex chatting the whole way? It was me specifically?
You mostly.
It wasn't me just looking out the window and them talking to you?
I'm going to object to asked and answered.
You can answer. Overruled. You can answer.
Can you ask it again?
It wasn't Alex and Tylee speaking to you and me just looking out the window the whole way home?
No.
And then when we got back to the house, what happened then?
You, Tylee, and Alex left in the rental car, the little red like SUV, and I spoke briefly with the detectives who were on the scene.
Who told us to leave in the rental car?
I don't recall who told you. I just know that Alex could not take his vehicle because the search warrant was still going and the vehicle was on the curtilage of the property.
Right. So we were told we couldn't take the truck, is that correct?
I believe so.
And we were told we couldn't take Tylee's Jeep, is that correct?
Correct, it was in the garage.
And we couldn't take my car because it was in the garage as well?
I believe so.
And so our only alternative, because we couldn't enter the house, is that correct?
Correct.
And that we were told that we could come back later, but not at that time, is that correct?
At the conclusion of the search warrant, yes.
And so we were told that we could take the rental car because it wasn't behind the police tape, is that correct?
Correct, it wasn't part of the search warrant.
That we could leave and that we could come back later after we picked up JJ from school, is that correct?
You could come back, assuming you picked him up from school, yes?
Well, that's not what we were instructed to do.
Objection, again, testifying.
Sustained.
So we left, is that correct? And then you entered the house after that?
You left, correct, and I entered the house after that, correct.
And what did you do inside the house after we left?
I had some brief discussion with the detectives who were on scene and at that point left to go work on another case.
Literally what she testified to, but okay.
So in the brief discussions that you had with whoever this was, were you briefing them on the events of what had happened up to that point, or?
So Detective Coons and Detective Duncan were present, along with Detective Werther. There was a crime scene technician as well, and they were briefly discussing some of the artifacts that they had found in the search warrant and kind of what they were going to do. And I indicated if I wasn't needed, I was going to go work on other casework.
Ouch.
Okay. And then you left shortly after that?
I did.
About what time do you think that was?
I honestly have no idea.
Do you know what time we got back to the house?
I don't specifically recall, no.
You indicated that when we came back to do for Alex to do the walkthrough, that you realized you didn't have Charles' phone, is that correct?
They had indicated prior to you coming back that they had not recovered Charles's phone. So when you returned, I asked you and subsequently Tylee about Charles's phone and where it was at.
And did she hand over the phone to you right away, right?
She did. She picked it up out of the cup holder and handed it to me.
And that's where it had been pretty much the whole day since I ran out the door with it.
I'm going to check
Is
to
there-
speculation.
There's no way to
and
prove that.
testifying.
And then you asked us for the code, is that correct?
I did.
And Tylee gave you the code, is that correct?
Correct.
And that was about what time?
It was later in the afternoon, but I don't remember what time.
Well, getting JJ from school. So,
And then what happens to the phone as far as chain of custody? What happened from you taking it from Tylee to where it went next?
So our computer crimes detectives work within the main station where I work. Most of our detectives work out of there. And they do the physical exams and the downloads of the phones, computers, electronic devices there at the station. Our property room is separate. It's about a mile away from the police department. So typically when we have cell phones or devices that need exams, we will immediately deliver the device to the computer crime section. Their workspace, their cubicles and workspace upstairs is a dedicated locked area. The only people that can get into where their cubicles and exam space are the detectives that work in that area. So it sounds silly. We go up and bang on the door and get in touch with somebody, and we will turn devices over to them. And then in our property section and our report management, we do what's called an evidence continuity sheet. So that shows how items travel from place to place, person to person, like a phone to a computer detective, or like evidence from the property room to the lab or something like that. So we will physically hand over items to the computer crimes detectives. Often cell phones have very time-sensitive criteria as well. So we don't typically impound them straight into property. They go straight to a computer crimes detective.
Okay, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Thank you for that. I'm going to backtrack to, from your hands, it goes into a evidence bag?
No, it's usually in a bag. It's not sealed because we hand it over because they're going to do an exam.
So who did you hand it over to them at the station, or did you give it to someone else at the house?
No, it got handed over at the station in their workspace. They typically don't come out to scenes unless we request them. So the majority of the time we're turning evidence over to them at the station or their work area.
Okay, so just so I understand, it went from you to them.
Correct.
So you had it in your hands and delivered it to them at the station that day?
I believe so, yes.
And so you, according to the grand jury, it was at 3:11 p.m.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Sorry.
The objection sustained.
My understanding was that it was about
Hold on,
3.
hold on.
Objection.
Let's break for the evening recess. Let's have the jurors report and be ready for 10:15 tomorrow morning, 10:15. Please remember the admonition.
All rise for the jury.
okay. Since they're done and I'm about to go on to day 6, I'm not going to obviously make it through before they get back into court today, and I will be live for that. But a couple of things. So I had this kind of gross realization, if you will, or like potential. I'm not saying that this definitely happened, but in my mind, I'm like, oh God, did they use his face to unlock the phone? Because it seems very odd that a grown man involved in insurance who's going to have delicate information on his phone would have a passcode of zeros. I know this is me making a joke, but it's kind of like Emily Gilmore in her panic room and having the number be 11111. I can't imagine him being like 0000 is legitimately his passcode to get into his phone if he's going to have delicate information in there for his business needs. Like, they say that the worst thing you can do is have your phone be a repeated number of the same digit. So I wonder if they didn't use his face. I don't know if thumbprint is really a thing anymore. I mean, I guess it is. But they used his face or his thumb to unlock that phone. Because if Lori is running around demanding to know who he's talking to, she clearly doesn't know the passcode then, or else she would have gone and locked herself in a room and unlocked it. But she needed him to unlock it. But then suddenly, they've had it for hours at this point. Because if they had to call Lori back, because they discovered that Charles' phone was not on his person, that it must have been in the car that he drove as a rental, because, again, all their vehicles were part of the property and part of the scene. She tried to say, well, it was in the car because Tylee handed it to her out of the cup holder. But that wasn't true, was it? Because it wasn't always in that car. In that interview room, she said she had his phone. So we're talking hours at this point. They're going to be able to take screenshots or even like use their phone to take pictures of his phone to get whatever they felt they needed off of it. At that point, and I'm sure when they go through his phone, they'll be able to see that his phone would have been viewed after he was dead. So that's disgusting to me that this woman is so entitled to the knowing what Charles was doing and knowing his intentions and knowing who he was. I mean, he was on a date the night before, which was something that really irritated her because, you know, it's not like she wasn't having a whole affair or anything. But she had that phone for hours and the passcode was zeros. I don't believe that for a second. And again, her getting mad that they weren't playing the whole video. They can't because it's too much information at once, first of all. And some of that does have to be redacted. And the questions and the reason why and you could tell that Miss K was getting kind of irritated, the prosecutor, because as part of pre-trial, it was determined against Lori's desire that they were not going to play the interview with Tylee. Lori argued that Tylee is unavailable as a witness. Doesn't really say it's not her fault, because obviously it is. She's been found guilty of that crime. But the prosecution argued that it was inappropriate for her to be able to use Tylee in her defense when Tylee is not here based on Lori's actions. If Tylee was unavailable because she died in a car accident, okay, that would have been relevant. They could have used her testimony, even though the jury would have to understand that she's not available because she died. Just like, I believe they could use the interview with Alex Cox. Don't quote me because I could be wrong. They could use portions of that because he died not legally at the hands of Lori, but because Tylee was a minor child who isn't here because of the direct actions of Lori, she couldn't utilize her for her defense. But she kept trying to put that in there, knowing that the jury isn't allowed to note that Lori is in prison, is an inmate of the Correctional Facility of Idaho for being part of the death of her children. They're not allowed to think about that. So she's trying poorly to have this kind of unfair advantage using Tylee's testimony indirectly by asking these questions, hoping that the prosecution's going to let it go, to where, okay, she says that Tylee and Charles didn't get along. Well, let's talk about that for a second. First of all, it's not uncommon for step parents and teenagers to argue. It's not. It's not uncommon for step parents and children to argue, just like it's not uncommon for parents to argue with children and vice versa. Because humans are flawed by design, and there are sometimes emotions that we are not capable of controlling all of the time. It doesn't mean Charles didn't care about Tylee, and it doesn't mean Tylee didn't care about Charles. You can dislike aspects of someone without hating them. And maybe in some ways she might have hated him. I don't know. But let's look at Tylee. Was she in therapy? Continued therapy? Somehow I doubt it. She'd known Charles since she was 3. There was a ton of problems with her biological father. At this point, her biological father is no longer alive, so I'm sure that gives Tylee some emotional damage or emotional problems at the time. I'm sure there was a lot of things that she was struggling with her mental health. Fighting with her stepdad, her mom's all over the place, she disappeared for 30 days, leaving Tylee to live with her uncle, who apparently isn't super emotionally stable either. All of these things is really hard. She's 16 years old. It is normal for a 16-year-old to be upset, combative, hostile, taking things out on the wrong person. That's not abnormal. That poor girl was probably going through a ton of emotions without any appropriate outlets, without any kind of continued therapy to think, hey, maybe she needs something here. This, is terrible, that perhaps, she needs to find a way to cope with the loss of her biological father. Even if she hated her biological father, there's still coping that needs to be done. Questions she will have that will never have answers. I mean, she's gone now, but I'm talking about at this time when Charles is killed. You can't take the emotional distress of a teenager against her, because there's so many things. The frontal lobe isn't completely matured at this point at 16. There's emotions that come with chemical balances and imbalances. She's on different medications. This is why the study of psychology is so big and so broad, because there's so many factors. You can't take 2 people and expect them to have the same feelings and results and behaviors and mannerisms, because it just depends. There's too many variables. There's the chemical variable of medication, there's history, there's nature versus nurture, there's just too many elements. You can take 2 children in the same household who are treated the same exact way, who have the same exact parents. They're still going to be different people. You can take a set of twins and they're going to be 2 separate people. I grew up with a set of twins that couldn't have been any more different, despite looking alike. One was quiet, one was not. Both were very studious and smart, but one was a little bit smarter than the other in the sense that she was in more advanced classes. But, with one being outgoing and having a ton of friends, the other one was more introverted, and she had friends, but kept her circle very small. They were 2 people raised by the same parents, lived in the same bedroom, had all of the same opportunities laying in front of them, played the same sports, but they are 2 totally different people. So for Lori to sit there and kind of do this comparison, well, how would this, everybody acts differently, that is true. But you're taking this testimony of yours saying that Tylee and Charles hated each other and they didn't get along, without taking into consideration Tylee's mental health. Her dad had died, her birth father had died. There was all those feelings there, resentment, hostility, loss. And then you couple them with, you know, maybe she didn't get along with her father, her stepdad, because, you know, her mother would say things that would piss her off, or she would think there was favoritism between her and JJ because JJ had all these needs and he was the one that was actually Charles's biological family. I mean, these are all speculation. We don't know how Tylee felt for real because she's not here to tell us how she feels. But I feel like all of these things matter. Being 16, having a mentally unstable mother who's gaslighting and manipulating you all the time, who abandons you for more than a month and forces you to live with your weird uncle that you feel like you need to sleep with a bat. Let's just talk about that. She stayed at her uncle's house the whole time Lori was running around with Chad Daybell, going to Hawaii and crap, while Charles had JJ, and she's staying with her uncle. Her biological father is dead, sleeping with a bat next to her for protection. Does no one find that weird, or is that just me? It's unbelievable that she felt the need, and she says that in her interview. Obviously, they didn't play it in court, but you can go to my first day, I think part 3, when I show the interview between this detective and Tylee said, I used to sleep with the bat next to me when I was living with my Uncle Alex. What reason did she feel she needed to have that bat next to her for protection? She can't tell us, but that's very telling to me. I don't know why she felt the need for that, why she would feel that she wasn't safe. And her mother was failing as a mother to protect Tylee and to see her safe. I'll be back in about a half an hour or so. I want to start with day 6. Hey Siri, what time is it in Arizona?
It's 12:01 p.m. in Donna, Texas.
Okay, that's Texas. That's not what I asked. Hey Siri, what time is it in Arizona?
In Phoenix, Arizona, it's 10:01
Okay.
a.m.
I'm actually going to go for half an hour. I'm going to go right to the live. So I'm going to take a few minutes. I'm going to go do some things I need to do, and then I'll be live for them going live. It should be in about a half an hour. So I'll see you then.